We talked to CBC executive producer Arnold Amber and anchor Peter Mansbridge earlier as final preparations were being made for tonight's televised coverage of Canada's election returns. Now here on C-SPAN, we'll go live to bring you a simulcast of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation's coverage of today's election results from Canada.
Welcome to British Columbia as you join the CBC's coverage of Election 93. I'm Peter Mansbridge. This has been a night unlike any other in Canadian political history. The Liberals, who've held power almost 64 years this century, are going to hold it again. You could count Tory seats on your fingers, and the Bloc Québécois could yet become the official opposition. So too, though, could Reform. Here are the latest standings as we look at them now, with all the provinces reporting so far, except British Columbia, where the polls have just closed, also the polls just closing in Yukon and parts of the Northwest Territories. This is what the country's map looks like. Red, the color of the Liberal Party. Look at those swashes of red. Up north, through the west, all through Ontario, mostly through Atlantic Canada. Overall numbers, look at that. Liberals leading or elected tonight, and most of them are elected now, in 170 seats. The Bloc Québécois leading or elected in 51. That includes their leader, Lucien Bouchard, as Jean Chrétien won his seat for the Liberals in Quebec. Reform, though, has just been making a move in the last half hour. Did not do well in central Canada, not at all. Didn't pick up very many votes or seats in Ontario, but started, once they crossed into the west, doing extremely well in Alberta. British Columbia will decide tonight who is going to be in the Stornoway, the official opposition. Here's the share of the vote. This tells you the story about how votes are moving back and forth. The Liberals, 45% of the vote tonight. Bloc Québécois, 17%, all centered in Quebec. The Tories, the lowest they've ever done in popular vote, 17%. You saw what it meant in seats, 3. Reform, 12.4%, but just starting to roll up the votes now in Western Canada. The NDP down at 5%, but for the NDP, so far it's translated into more seats than the Tories have got. Both the NDP and the Tories on the verge of being eliminated from official party status in the House of Commons. So a very sweet night for Jean Chrétien's Liberals and for the man himself. Despite some indications he'd have a rough ride in his riding, he did not. Jean Chrétien won his seat. He won it big time. All those stories you heard that he was in trouble did not materialize tonight. Jean Chrétien wins in Saint-Maurice in Quebec, back in his old riding that he held for so long, from the mid-60s until he retired from politics early in the 80s, and then came back as leader in 1990. He wins his seat of Saint-Maurice in Quebec. Now, Lucien Bouchard, the Bloc Québécois, it could well occupy the front rows on the opposition side unless that Reform push keeps going through into British Columbia. Lucien Bouchard wins his seat, and so do a lot of other Bloc Québécois members in Quebec. We can also tell you at this hour that Preston Manning has been elected in his Calgary riding. He has that news just coming in. Close race for a while, but Preston Manning has won in Calgary. There was some doubt about that. Often in campaigns, doubts about how well leaders are going to do. So far, they've all won their seats. Still 2 to come, though. Kim Campbell in Vancouver, Audrey McLaughlin in the Yukon. Votes are still coming in. Of course, British Columbians will decide 32 seats. Based on the numbers already elected, we're going to have a very different parliament, that's for sure. Let's take a computerized tour of what will be the very near future. This is a look inside the House of Commons right now, as we've been accumulating votes all night, making projections, predictions, and elections. This is what the seats look like now. These are definitely elected already. This does not include candidates who are leading. 157 Liberals elected already. They're in red. They're in the House of Commons. So many that they got to put extras on one other side of the House. Reform elected 10 so far, but remember, leading in almost every Alberta riding, upwards of a total of near 30 if they keep winning. 49 Bloc Québécois members elected. There's a couple of ridings undecided yet in Quebec. How many Tories? Look real hard deep into that corner down there. you see 2. That's it. That's all for the Tories right now in the House of Commons. We'll see what happens in British Columbia. That'll be the scene in Ottawa. Let me set the scene here at our new CBC Broadcast Centre in Toronto with Mission Control located in the atrium that's dedicated here to the late Barbara Frum. We're geared up to provide you with instant results, reaction, and analysis from right across the country. We've got our panel of razor-sharp political minds gathered tonight to talk to us about what's happening. And we've also got a cross-section of Canadians all the way from Toronto to Vancouver to Halifax. We're now able to link up with our Vancouver audience shortly to join this audience here in Toronto, as well as Halifax and Montreal. And we're hoping to spend a good deal of time in the next couple of hours talking to them about the decisions that, in fact, they've made today as part of the Canadian electorate on returning a Liberal majority government. Still a lot of drama to unfold, a lot of history to be written, so on with the show. Pamela Wallin is with me as she is every night on CBC Primetime News. Pamela, the story continues to unfold.
Well, we know the big picture, that's for sure. There's a Liberal majority government in this country. Jean Chrétien has been elected in his seat, so he will be the Prime Minister and he will lead that majority government. We know the Bloc Québécois right now stands as this country's official opposition, but the interesting twist at this point as we move into British Columbia is whether or not the Reform can actually do it. We're all busy sitting here with our calculators and our high-tech computers trying to figure out whether or not they could actually rival the BQ, the Bloc Québécois, and become the official opposition. So we'll have to see what happens in the province of British Columbia. That's the big story that we're looking at now. And of course the fate of the 2 leaders, Kim Campbell, and that says a lot about the future of the Conservative Party, what happens to her, and Audrey McLaughlin as well in Yukon.
Right, British Columbians often complain to us that they never get to decide anything by the time the polls close in BC.
They'll be deciding something tonight.
They certainly are tonight. Right. Not the big picture story in terms of who the majority government is. It is the Liberal Party, but what they may very well decide whether Reform gets to go to Ottawa as the opposition party. Right. They also may decide, as you said, the fates of 2 particular leaders, McLaughlin in the Yukon, where the polls have just closed, and Kim Campbell, but also whether the NDP or the Tories. I mean, look, Tories are running 5th here tonight.
Well,
they're just 1 ahead of independents.
Our political panel was talking about that a little bit earlier on. I mean, there was going to be a race for last place in this country, too, as we have seen. Really, the devastation of 2 mainstream, traditional parties in this country. We'll see how many seats the 2 can revive in the western part of the country, because it is traditional turf in a way for them. But, boy, Reform is on the roll there as we've seen the numbers move. So.
Okay, well, as we signed on just a few minutes ago in British Columbia, the rest of the country have been watching for some time now. We said the word had just come in from the Calgary riding that Preston Manning is running in. He has won his seat. Kevin Tibbles is standing by in Calgary tonight. He's watched Preston Manning throughout this campaign, covered him for us. Clearly a very interesting race as it's developing now for the opposition leader's spot. Kevin?
Well, Peter, it was mighty quiet in here when our broadcast went on the air in this time zone. Everyone was looking at Ontario, and everyone was shaking their heads in disappointment with what has happened there. Spirits picked up when the election moved across through Manitoba and Saskatchewan. Now that it has hit Alberta and is going into British Columbia, all eyes are on the television sets here. Everyone is looking for the results coming from British Columbia, and most people are hoping that, of course, here at Mr. Manning's headquarters, that they will indeed catch Mr. Bouchard and the Bloc.
All right, Kevin Tibbles, we'll be back to you later. And when should we expect that Preston Manning will be coming down there?
Well, interesting point. Originally, he was supposed to come down early. He did not because of the Ontario results, I'm told. At this point, throughout this campaign, Mr. Manning has always said he does not want to be another regional rump party. At this point, I believe he's upstairs right now trying to come up with an answer to come downstairs and explain to us just exactly what he's now going to do in Ottawa, considering that he does not have very many seats east of the Manitoba border.
All right, Kevin, thanks very much. He's probably also wanting to see a final determining factor as to whether or not he's going to finish 2nd or 3rd overall in terms of seats tonight. The Liberal story is an amazing one in the country, but the Reform story in Alberta is just as amazing. 22 seats they're leading or elected in right now. The Liberals in 4, the Tories 0. It's been 53 years since the Tories have been shut out in Alberta. 1940 was the last time the Tories failed to win a seat in Alberta. Tonight, they are not leading in any of them. The overall numbers, 172 Liberals, 53 Bloc Québécois, 28 Reform, If they're going to finish number 2 overall, they are going to have to win the vast majority of seats in British Columbia tonight. Nothing is impossible, we've learned tonight. When you look at these other numbers, 7 NDPers, 2 Tories, 1 other, that's an independent in Quebec, a former Tory who Kim Campbell wouldn't sign the papers for because of a conviction that candidate had had. He has been elected in the Beauce region of Quebec. He will sit in the House of Commons as an independent. The share of the vote, 45% of the vote has gone Liberal so far tonight, 17% for both the Conservatives in the Bloc Québécois, 13% in Reform, and you'll see that number edging up as the votes are counted in BC, NDP at 5%, and the various selection of other parties at 3%. Rex Murphy has been helping us understand the story behind the numbers. You get caught up with a lot of numbers on election night. Rex tries to analyze them, tell us what they really mean. Here he is now, Rex Murphy.
Okay, well, what we've been seeing here is that the complete evisceration of the Conservatives and the Liberal wave that's been rolling across Canada, apart from Quebec perhaps, has hit a breakwater in Alberta. First, we're going to have a look at the change of seats. As you can see right here, the jump for the Liberals right here is just in terms of numbers is 0.3, but it's Reform that's made the big leap in Alberta. It's 35%, and if you notice, it's almost a mirror image of the 37% of the Conservatives. But there's still one more interesting thing. In Alberta, it has up to this point been almost federally an exclusive one-party province. It's almost a one-party province again tonight. It's Reform. Reform had hoped to do something different, but we have now almost a block, if you will, in the province of Alberta. We can see the change in this in our more graphic board. There's the Conservatives when they were in their palmy and high days. Watch what happened over the last 2.5 hours here. Egad, the growth of the beast is now complete. Reform has concentrated its effort, and it's constituted itself as a single entity in Alberta. It is the major thing right there. It's probably the stop of the full Liberal sweep. We can illustrate this one more time just in the riding of Macleod. There you see Reform with a vote of 68%, which is quite astronomical, a gain of 37%. How many did the Conservatives lose in this case? 33. So the Liberals made tepid gains in Alberta, but Alberta now has become a Reform fastness, a fortress. It is the second block on the Canadian map. Back to you, Peter.
All right, Rex, thanks very much. Early returns coming in from the Yukon, very early returns, show Audrey McLaughlin trailing with 1 poll counted. And when I say early returns, it's early. The Liberal candidate has 7, Audrey McLaughlin has 4. So I think we'll be waiting for a lot more from that before we decide whether there's a trend developing in the Yukon. Overall numbers, there you see them. Keep watching them and watch that Reform number. Will it edge up as the BC ridings start to come in? They should be starting in the next few minutes. Meanwhile, here's Pamela.
Well, let me introduce to all of you in British Columbia joining us and Points North, our political panel. They have been here all night analyzing these results, explaining what they all mean. Hugh Segal, former Chief of Staff to former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney. Stephen Lewis, the former leader of the New Democrats in the province of Ontario. Heather Reisman, who is a Liberal Party strategist and businesswoman. And Tom Flanagan is here speaking for the Reform Party tonight. And Tom, let's take a look at those Reform numbers. You didn't actually make your beachhead in Ontario. You didn't actually make that breakthrough. The question now is, can you gather the numbers as we move into British Columbia to actually rival the BQ, the Bloc Québécois, for opposition status?
Well, Pamela, looking at this in more of a long-term context, I really don't think it's a major issue as to whether or not Reform becomes the official opposition. I think the story for Reform is that it's going to elect members in 4 provinces. That's going to provide a base to build for the future. It would have been better to elect somebody in Ontario, but Reform did get 20% of the popular vote in Ontario, showing that there's considerable strength there.
But with no seats there, does it not make Reform Party really just a Western regional party?
Well, you're talking about 4 provinces and substantial showing in Ontario. I think that this is a springboard for the future. You start with the West and you work out across the rest of the country. So
okay,
that's a good result.
I want to come back and pick up on your point that it doesn't really matter whether you form the opposition or not. Certainly your leader has been campaigning in the last couple of days about the disaster that might unfold if we hand that job over to separatists in this country. I mean, is it not important?
Well, certainly it would be nice to be official opposition, but as I said, look at the context here. We're talking about a party that at dissolution had 1 member and is going to come back with 40 or more from 4 provinces. This is quite a success story, and whether or not it makes official opposition is not something that I'm going to lose sleep over.
All right, Heather, how do you see this phenomenon that we're heading into? I mean, obviously there is a Liberal sweep across the country. There's no question about that, but we are seeing these regional blocs in Alberta, in Quebec. Is it going to make it pretty tricky?
I think the best interpretation of it, or implication for the future, is we do need to listen to and understand what voters were thinking and saying when they voted for the Reform Party and for the Bloc. I mean, the Bloc is clearer. I think the Reform Party votes, many of them I still believe were protest votes, and I think we have to understand what that is and reflect it in the directions we take. I, for one, am happy to see that they did not make the kind of progress that they had intended.
Stephen?
I think it will be quite fascinating to watch the dynamic of the House of Commons, and I'm awfully skeptical about making predictions now. The Bloc will be the official opposition, yes, but it will ask questions that are geographically and regionally centered. The Reform coming in third will have an opportunity to ask questions in broader terms. They'll probably do that. I'm not excited about it, but I have to accept it as a reality. If the NDP edges up to 12 seats and has official party status, and that is possible with the BC results yet to come, then the dynamic of three opposition parties jostling vigorously and ideologically could make for a fascinating House of Commons. I'm not as anxious about it as are others.
Hugh, is that something just to be said? I mean, if this is what the Canadian people want, if this is what they voted in, so be it.
Well, of course, the voters are never wrong. They can, on occasion, be a little excessive, as I think they are tonight, but they're never wrong.
Or recessive.
And, you know, these parties will have the numbers, and they'll have perhaps a substantial presence. The small band of loyal but intellectually focused conservatives will keep them all honest, and that's our responsibility.
How was it that you were going to get back to the House of Commons, Hugh?
Well, there's going to be one or two there, and maybe 3 or 4. We'll have to wait and see.
Hugh was saying earlier that you could count the Conservatives on the finger of one hand.
We may be to that at this point. Now let me introduce a face that some of you will be seeing a lot of in the days and weeks to come. Daniel Turp. He's a close friend and advisor to Lucien Bouchard with the Bloc Québécois. They're sitting there right now with official party status. Mr. Turp, we heard from Lucien Bouchard a little bit earlier on. I guess as far as you're concerned, you're moving ahead. You will take up the role of official opposition in this country unless something dramatic happens in British Columbia. Is that how you see it?
I think that might exactly be what Monsieur Bouchard is intending to do, seeing the important number of seats the Bloc has won. It should be seen as a major victory, not only in Quebec, but in Canada. This number of seats shouldn't be underestimated, and I think the Bloc will deserve being the official opposition. As Mr. Bouchard said, on the other hand, is that he will have a very responsible, constructive role in the House of Commons, that he will want to discuss common interests to both Quebec and Canada.
Well, if your stated intention, it certainly has been stated by Mr. Bouchard repeatedly in the course of this campaign, is to take Quebec's interests there, to make sure Quebec's interests are represented and ensured, and to make sure that Quebec gets its fair share, how is it that you would be able to speak for other regions not represented?
Well, Quebec will not speak for other regions, and Monsieur Bouchard will not speak for other regions, but he will take into account interest of other regions when he will be speaking as a leader of the opposition. And I think there will be other opposition parties that will talk for other regions, and together the opposition might be very strong and might make the House of Commons a more interesting, more challenging place to be for parliamentarians.
It certainly is going to be an interesting place. Daniel Turp, thanks very much for your comments tonight, and that's really what we're waiting to see unfold at this point. What will be that final shape of the House of Commons? How will the Reform perform in Western Canada? So we'll be looking at that. Peter?
That's right, Pamela, because if it's going to happen for Reform, it's going to happen in British Columbia. They're going to have to do extremely well in British Columbia tonight, because as you see, the Bloc settling in now around 53 seats, Reform at 28, as the votes are starting to be counted in British Columbia. Still very early yet, but at 28 seats, 32 seats available in British Columbia. You can do the math as well. They're going to have to do extremely well, get almost all the seats in BC to push themselves up and above that Bloc Québécois number. Anyway, that story's still yet to come. The panel was talking about the impact of both Bloc and Reform in a House of Commons. The number 2, 3 parties, you pick it which way they're going to end up, but they'll certainly end up in one way or another in that order. So let's hear from the people now. We've gathered them here in Toronto, in Montreal, in Halifax, and in Vancouver. Let's go to Montreal first. Denis, your thoughts on the impact and the success tonight of the two parties, the Bloc Québécois and the Reform Party.
Well, as far as the Bloc Québécois is concerned, I'm very disappointed to see such a success on their part. I think they have created an illusion amongst Quebecers that if you're a French Quebecer, you have to be a separatist and a sovereignist. And I think that is not a good image to reflect upon Canada. I think Mr. Bouchard will have to become more reasonable and more responsible with such a big mandate that he has now. As far as the Reform Party is concerned, I believe that maybe the Anglos, the rest of Canada has become more comprehensible about the situation that is now in Canada, and they make more sense out of their vote, and that's why the Reform Party got just an amount of 31 or 32 seats.
And it may be more than that too, depending on how voters in BC decide tonight. Here in Toronto, David, what's your reaction to this when you hear the Reform Party doing so well and the Bloc Québécois party doing so well?
I'm very disappointed, truthfully. In my opinion, I would be very happy if they split whatever they have right now. In my opinion, I'm very ecstatic, actually, about the Liberals having a majority government, because I think we'll have a good government now.
Let's hear that. Vive le Bloc? Why?
Why? I think that, there's now been a death of the left in Canada. What has effectively happened is the NDP has been wiped out. The Bloc Québécois, if we can look beyond the sovereignty issue, really is a left of center social democratic party.
How can you look beyond the sovereignty issue? I mean, Lucien Bouchard in his speech definitely put that as the major agenda of this party, and I think that's the problem with Quebec, is that they got conned into voting the Bloc because they thought that's what they have to do. This is a vote for Quebec, but instead you're giving the power to the wrong person.
Canada was a marriage of convenience, and its divorce is inevitable.
Don't you think it's time the English Canadians wake up to the fact that Quebec is not a province like the others? It's not a region.
I agree.
It's a nation that's fighting for self-determination. The Charlottetown Accord was the last gasp for the old liberal federalism.
And that's why I think
one at a time. Got to be one at a time.
I think that's why it's important that the Liberals got the majority that they got, because you've got the Reform Party pulling for the West, and you've got the Bloc pulling for Quebec. Who's going to pull for Canada? And that's the problem with all the electorate has to face today.
I want to go out to Halifax quickly. Susan in Halifax, you want to buy into this discussion as well? What are you thinking about this? Susan in Halifax, can you hear me?
Hi.
There you are, Susan. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's all okay. I really don't see it as that big a problem. We've always had Quebec as a big factor in Canadian politics, and they've always been within the context of the party that was in power.
Susan, just a sec. Susan, just a sec. Hold on. A couple of stations got to break away here now to analyze the results in their area. We'll be right back to Susan in just a moment. For those of you in our continuing coverage on Election Night 93, Susan, I'm sorry interrupting you like that. Go ahead, perhaps start over with the point again, once again.
Hi, that's quite all right. What I was saying was I don't really see it as big a problem as a lot of people do. Quebec has always been a major force. The federal parties have always tried to placate them and deal with them. Now maybe Quebec's cards will be on the table and the federal politicians won't have to dance around them. Maybe now they can get into serious negotiations. Maybe now the Quebec people will feel more satisfied. Just like with Reform out West, maybe the West will feel more satisfied that they're being truly represented. Obviously, the federal parties have not been able to do it. We've had several referendums, but yet Quebecers have always voted to stay in Canada. So maybe they want to be more represented to what they need, but maybe it doesn't mean that they're going to leave Canada.
All right, Patrice in Montreal, you've heard a number of different opinions on how we should be looking at the Bloc tonight and their representation, the impact it might have on Parliament. What do you think?
Well, I think many of them are right. I would say that both Quebecers and reformists have sent a very strong message towards decentralization of Canada. In Quebec, that decentralization might end up in sovereignty. In the West, it might end up differently, but it's still a strong message toward regionalization of Canada. It's also a strong message towards speaking the truth for the government, which the Tories haven't done. And the vote has gone to the Liberals and to the regional parties in kind of a protest vote for that.
All right, Patrice, thanks very much. Here in Toronto, a comment right here.
I'm just concerned that the electorate is back to getting what they had, where we were a year and a half ago. Back to constitutional issues again. And I don't think that's what they wanted. They got very angry about the Tory concentration on the Constitution and not paying attention to the economic issues that they were concerned about.
Well,
so here we go again.
But I don't think that anybody who thinks that national unity is not an issue is dead wrong. Because obviously it is, if Quebec feels as strongly as it is to vote in as many Bloc as they have.
I walk in as a protest against Mulroney, against the Liberals. That's what it was more of a protest vote.
It goes a lot deeper to that than that. And the issue is not national unity, it's multinational unity. You know, when peoples in Eastern Europe fight for self-determination, we praise them to the skies. When it happens in our backyard, we go frantic.
I mean, they want to talk about economic issues, and what we're talking about is Quebec saying that they want to take care of their own house.
Okay, let's go to Halifax. Michael in Halifax, you want to get into this discussion?
Hi, Peter. I'd like to raise the sights a little bit. I think the majority that we have seen take place tonight or get established tonight has a much larger mandate than dealing with the domestic issues that have just been mentioned. I think Canada, with the position that we're going to see our government in over the next several years, has an obligation to send a message to the world. 25% of our national debt is owned outside of our borders. That's the scariest debt situation in the world today.
Well,
and
what's the message then that you want to hear sent?
The message I want to see go out is that we can manage, one of the most resourceful countries in the world, that we can deal with our domestic issues, pull a rich and resourceful country together, solve our problems, not take a place in the world because somebody allows us to get it, but to earn it. And contribute as we should feel obligated to do, rather than playing a much more passive role as we have in the past. So we've got to clean up our act domestically. If we don't, our international creditors are going to pull the plug. What we saw in New Zealand over the past number of years is nothing compared to what could impact on Canada unless we do it. Okay. We see a government now that can do that. It has the mandate. I sincerely hope it'll make it.
Okay, well, interesting points. More here in Toronto. This gentleman right here.
Well, I guess I'm saddened by the results, really. I mean, you go and you travel, you go to different parts of the world, and Canada is envied by everybody, almost. You know, you go out there and it's a stable place. It's a wonderful country, the best country to live in. And tonight I see the results, and I think, is it a protest vote? Is it more than that? I'm not sure myself. I'd like to think it is.
But why are you saddened? What saddens you about it?
Because of the potential breakup. Because the way Mr. Bouchard was speaking tonight, there was no reassurance to English Canada. There really wasn't. He was not reaching out. He was being even more militant in a sense, I think.
Okay, other comments? Yes.
I think it's clear that this is a protest vote. People want accountability. They're tired of politicians not listening to them. And so they've gone to the regional parties. I believe Canadians love Canada. Whether Lucien Bouchard has his own agenda is not necessarily what Quebec wants. And while he may get into opposition and try to promote that agenda, I believe Quebecers, as with English Canadians, love this country and want to keep it together.
All right, just over here.
We have to understand that Quebec has been separating for the last couple of years, and what we're doing is negotiating with Quebec. It's a de facto thing unless something dramatic happens to turn it around. Now, I find that very disturbing because my Canada very definitely does include Quebec, and I really hope that it can stay in. But I think we have to understand in English Canada, in the rest of Canada, that Quebec is separating and we're negotiating. I don't think this is a protest vote. I think this is a real vote.
And right beside you there, you wanted to mention?
Well, I believe that the result of tonight's election, with the Reform and the Bloc Québécois doing as well as they have done, is a clear signal that Canadians are fed up with the old politics. They are fed up with listening and dealing with the politicians who make promises they don't keep, who speak with both sides of their mouths, and who really just don't live up to what they say during their campaign. So it's a clear sign that Canadians are ready for change and eager to take on the non-traditional parties.
Okay, I'm sorry, I got time for one quick comment from Halifax. Go ahead, Halifax.
Hi there, I just got to say something about the Bloc Québécois. One of your speakers said that...
You have to make it quick.
one of the speakers said that they don't represent English Canada. I have to say that in Acadian, I'm concerned that the Bloc Québécois voice will deafen the rest of French Canada's voice and will be reduced to a mere whisper. You have to remember that the Bloc Québécois is not the Bloc Acadien, not the Bloc Français, and English Canada has to realize.
Gotta stop you there. Sorry, we got other parts of the country joining in now. A sense from our town hall. We'll have more of it coming up on our live CBC coverage of Election 93. Good evening once again. I'm Peter Mansbridge. Let's bring things up to date. The Liberals have a majority government. The Tories have been relegated to the political wasteland. And two newcomers, the Bloc and Reform, are fighting it out for second place. Here's the big picture, and boy, did it ever change. Here are the numbers we're looking at. Well, actually, here's one look. This would hardly be the big picture. It's the small picture in that one particular riding. Here's the big picture, the map of Canada. Let's have a look how it's shaping up in terms of colors. Red is Liberal red. That map gives you some extent of how big the Liberals are doing, how they're stacking up seats everywhere, but you can translate it into real seat numbers. Look at that. The Liberals at 172 seats leading are elected. The vast majority of those are elected right now. The Bloc Québécois at 53, the Reform at 29, the NDP at 6, the Tories, that's right, these are Conservatives, 2, count them, that's it. Elsie Wayne in New Brunswick, Jean Charest in Quebec, the only 2 Tories elected so far tonight. Now, the big picture in the space of one election, we've seen a pillar of Canadian politics, the Tories, crumble. We've seen a party devoted to a sovereign Quebec grab more than 50 seats. And we're seeing right now the rise of Reform. Things aren't going to look the same on Parliament Hill, not at all. In fact, with the help of a computer, you just saw what things might look like on Parliament Hill. We go inside the House of Commons now to have a look at what it'll look like in here by a computer-generated graphic. The seats in the House of Commons, what'll they look like? You got to look at it in terms of the seats that have been elected so far. Who's got the seats? 164 Liberals, as we said. Most of them, of that other number, the 170-odd number, were elected. 164 elected Liberals, so many that they spill over onto the other side of the House. The Reform has elected 24 members so far. The Bloc Québécois at 52. The Tories, 2 seats. That's it. That's all they've got right now in the House of Commons. But the big numbers still to come in British Columbia. British Columbians will decide whether the Bloc or Reform takes the opposition House. At the moment, it's looking like Bloc. Reform will have to do extremely well in BC to stop them. A lot of Tories are shaking their heads tonight. A lot of historians are sharpening their pens, and a lot of results are still to come. So this night isn't over yet, far from it. Pamela Wallin is with me. Pam, it's still, every time you go up and look through those numbers, as we've been doing for the last couple of hours, hard to describe them, and you're running out of adjectives.
Yes, we are. There's no question that the Liberal majority government is a huge majority, and Jean Chrétien is the leader. He was elected, despite some of the polls that said he might not be. He will sit as Prime Minister and leader of his party in the House of Commons, so that's been established. Preston Manning, the leader of the Reform, has been elected, and of course Lucien Bouchard, the leader of the Bloc Québécois, has been elected. So now that we are into the area of British Columbia and the Yukon, we'll wait and find out what happens to Kim Campbell and Audrey McLaughlin. But as Peter was saying, really what we're trying to establish at this point as we count those votes in the province of British Columbia and points north is who will be the official opposition. Right now it's in the Bloc's hands. The question is, can Reform capture enough in the province of British Columbia, and boy, they'd have to take most of those 32 seats to do it, but to give the Bloc a run for their money. So that's the story that, as it unfolds, as we broadcast in British Columbia and points north.
An amazing story it is. Look at that, Liberals, 92 seats they've taken from other parties tonight. And the Tory number is like absolutely amazing. How do you describe that? They've lost 156 seats tonight. Never before in the history of Canadian politics has any party come anywhere near losing that many seats in one night of politics in this country. The NDP losing 21 seats. No party, as we said, has lost more seats in any single election.
It really is an interesting question now because we have 2 parties so far. The only time the Conservatives finished lower than second was back in 1921, as we're seeing on our fact board there. But the question, of course, that both the Conservatives and New Democrats are facing tonight is, what next? how do they rebuild parties and put them back together? Because when you're looking at this kind of result on the election board, it's a pretty dismal future there.
Okay, so 3 stories to watch for in BC. Will Reform pick up enough seats to form the opposition? Can the NDP get more seats, enough to keep official party status? Same goes for the Tories. Seems unlikely in many of those counts. Don Newman is watching BC. Here he is now. Don?
Thank you, Peter. Well, 2 of those stories in a way are tied together. How many NDP seats? Remember, the NDP had 19 of the 32 seats in British Columbia in the last Parliament. How many of those 19 seats can the Reform take as they take Tory seats as well? Interesting to see. Let's look at the scoreboard, if we can, from British Columbia. And there you see it at the moment. Reform leading in 3, the Liberals leading in 2. The NDP at the moment only leading in 1. Let's go through some of the ridings that we've been able to see. Kootenay East actually counts with Alberta. That's why we can say already the decision desk has said Reform has taken that seat. Jim Abbott has taken that seat. Sid Parker, the New Democrat who held it in the last Parliament, has lost. He ran 3rd in the riding, as you can see, behind the Liberal. So there is a story there. That is one of the ones that Reform had to get, and it has it. But that hurts the NDP as they try to become an official party or remain an official party in the Parliament, in the new Parliament that's being elected. So there you see again, just to refresh your mind, Reform leading in 3, Liberals leading in 2, and the NDP in 1. Let's see if we can see a couple of other ridings. Can we see perhaps a couple of other ridings coming up? Well, Skeena, that is a riding that the NDP has held. The new candidate, though, that is Joe Barrett. He is the son of Dave Barrett, the former NDP premier, the member from Esquimalt. He is trying to hold on to that seat for the NDP, but there it is the Liberals who are in the lead at the moment. Again, just 2 of 180 polls. Reform running second. Reform, if they want to get into that official opposition position, are going to have to move up on that. And the NDP, if they want to keep their status as a party, are going to have to win that seat too. Now here's Brian Gardner. He has been trailing the Reform, but for the moment at least he has moved in front again. So that is a good news seat for the NDP as they try to be remain an official party. Bad news though, Reform were running at the top of the poll there. Now they are running 3rd. So the obviously very early polls. Capilano Howe Sound, that's the Health Minister Mary Collins. She is trailing at the moment, but that is really 1 of 155 polls. And as you can see, a tight race there. The Liberals with a 3-vote lead, and the Reform only 10 votes behind. So, Peter, you can see as we look at the polls in the early returns from British Columbia, those stories both still in play. At the moment, it would appear, though, that the Reform are going to have a hard time making it as the official opposition. The NDP are going to have a hard time making it to maintain their official party status.
And unlikely that the Tories are going to retain their official party status. But as you said so well, all 3 of those stories link together depending on which way the votes break out in British Columbia. But as you also mentioned, on very early results so far in British Columbia, actually much slower than many of the other provinces tonight in getting results out. We're still only looking at 6 or 7 ridings having reported so far in British Columbia. Liberals with 3, Reform with 3, and these are just all leadings. Nobody's been elected yet. NDP at 1. The latest word out of the Yukon has Audrey McLaughlin now ahead in her riding, but it's close and it's early yet in the Yukon. But she has a lead of a couple hundred actually right now, so she's starting to make a good move in Yukon. 366 votes to 192, but obviously that's early. Still just a few polls reporting in Yukon, but so far Audrey McLaughlin keeping the trend alive of all the leaders either leading or elected in their seats. In Vancouver Centre, though, this could be the one that bucks the trend. First poll, very early. First poll out of 246 reporting. The Liberal candidate, Fye, ahead of Campbell, the Conservative leader, and the candidate running in Vancouver Centre. But that's early, 1 poll only reporting. Let's go down to Wendy Mesley. Wendy.
Thank you, Peter. I'm here with 2 women, the former and the current president of the National Action Committee on the Status of Women, Sunera Tobeni and Judy Reddick. We're just getting very early returns now on both Audrey McLaughlin and Kim Campbell, the leaders of 2 traditional parties that are not doing very well tonight. We could even see the end of these parties in terms of having official status in the House. Could it possibly have anything to do with the fact that they're women?
No, I don't think it's to do with the fact that they are women. With Miss Campbell, it's very clear during the summer she enjoyed a lot of popularity when she presented herself as doing politics differently. She didn't do politics differently, and she didn't support policies which were different from Mr. Mulroney's, and that's the big factor. That's the clear message which is being sent to the Tories tonight. And as far as Miss McLaughlin also, I don't think it's the fact that she's a woman as much as it's the party and, you know, the position the party took during the referendum, and also the experience with provincial NDP governments.
Judy Rebeck?
I agree with that. I don't think that their gender had very much to do with the defeat of their parties. I am concerned, though, that in the post-election period, some of the backroom boys will draw that conclusion and say that it was a factor of gender. But in fact, when Kim Campbell talked about being a woman, talked about bringing women's reality into politics over the summer, that's when she was most popular. And the votes she lost, a lot of the votes she lost were the women's vote. She had, opened up a gender gap where more women than men were supporting the Tories over the summer. And she lost that in the course of the campaign, as well as losing, obviously, a lot of other votes.
We haven't yet seen the final results for the Reform Party, but obviously they are going to be a major voice in this new parliament. Judy Rebeck, what do you think? What their position on women's issues? Is it something... what do you expect?
One of the things I said is some of these Reform candidates make John Crosbie look like Gloria Steinem. I mean, they are so retrograde on women's issues. It's unbelievable. You know, they're against every step that women have taken toward equality, against child care, pay equity, maternity leave, employment equity. 68% of the candidates that answered are against abortion. They're basically against women's equality, and I hope that there's a lot of strong liberal feminists there who can stand up to them in the House of Commons.
Thank you both very much. Back to you, Peter.
All right, Wendy, the results still trickling in from British Columbia. At the moment, no real trends starting to be established yet in BC. We haven't seen enough votes yet, but for Reform, they've obviously got to do, as we've said, if they're going to catch Bloc for second place, they've got to do extremely well in British Columbia. We can't update you on one race we've been watching closely tonight. It has been declared now. Lorne Nystrom, the NDP long-time NDP member from the Yorkville area in Saskatchewan, has lost tonight, so he joins those in the loss column for the NDP. Lorne Nystrom not back in the House of Commons. Now, some sense of who are those two Tories? We've mentioned them to you a couple of times tonight. One, the very popular Tory member from Sherbrooke, obviously very popular tonight because he's one of only two who's won in his riding of Sherbrooke. A very healthy lead for Jean Charest, nationally known number 2 runner-up to Kim Campbell in the Tory leadership race. A lot of Tories wondering tonight whether they picked the right person. St. John, New Brunswick, Elsie Wayne, former mayor of St. John, very popular there. Healthy lead as she wins with all the polls reporting tonight. Elsie Wayne is the other Tory. Of the Liberal, of the NDP, some familiar national faces. Rod Murphy trailing in Churchill. He's losing to Elijah Harper. You remember him from the Meech Lake debate. Elijah Harper at this moment leading Rod Murphy in the riding of Churchill. And Vic Althouse in Saskatchewan. He is leading. He is one of the few NDP candidates tonight leading. Longtime veteran member from Saskatchewan. And Vic Althouse leading in his riding, but it has not been declared yet. Here's one of the other NDP losses at the moment, shaping up to be a loss in Moose Jaw Lake Centre, where the NDP is trailing, but not by much. It's still a race. We haven't declared it yet. And the lead here is a victory for the NDP in Regina Lumsden. And I think, if I'm correct, that is the first confirmed elect for the NDP tonight. The other ridings the NDP is just leading in. No, here's another one. Simon DeYoung will be back from Regina Capel as Simon DeYoung wins his riding in Regina Capel in Saskatchewan. So we'll look at some of the faces from the Liberal caucus. Here is Chris Axworthy from Saskatoon Clark's Crossing. He's leading in his riding right now. It hasn't been declared yet. Axworthy making a national name for himself in 1988 when he defeated the then Justice Minister Ray Natishan out of the Conservative cabinet, and Natishan went from defeated cabinet minister to government house eventually. Moose Jaw Lake Centre, and we saw this one just a few minutes ago where the NDP is trailing in that riding.
We're really seeing the impact of Reform in some of these ridings in Saskatchewan where they're splitting the vote. And there's Audrey McLaughlin from the Yukon, only 15 out of 78 polls, but so far she is leading.
All right, so that will be one of the other stories we continue to watch as the evening continues to unfold. We sort of lost track of the fact here in the last half hour or so that the Liberals have a huge majority government. I mean, this is 180 seats. Is one of the biggest majorities the Liberals have ever had. Louis Saint-Laurent had the biggest one in terms of numbers in the early 1950s. But Jean Chrétien getting close to those numbers now.
295 seats in the House of Commons, and as we began this evening, we were talking about the 148 that Mr. Chrétien would need and how he would have to build that province by province. Well, he's been building it, and they've been moving ahead with like a steamroller really right across. And province in the province of Quebec, as far as the Liberal Party is concerned, the Bloc still has a big chunk there, and they are still sitting at this moment as the official opposition in this country. But we're waiting for those results in British Columbia.
Well, we've just decided we've seen enough of the results in British Columbia, and we are going to declare that the Bloc Québécois will be the official opposition party in Canada at the end of the evening. We're projecting the Bloc Québécois as the official opposition. When we've looked at the BC results, we've waited, as Pamela said, to see enough ridings, see the way the trends are developing. Were the Liberals making the breakthrough? Were Reform picking up enough seats? We say no, they can't catch the Bloc now, so the Bloc will finish second, and we have that interesting situation where a party and a leader determined to take Quebec out of the country becomes the nation's opposition leader.
And Mr. Bouchard has been saying repeatedly in the last few days of this campaign that the voters of Quebec, their votes count just like anybody else's, and it's not his problem if they're all geographically condensed, and if that's the second highest number of votes in the country in our first past the post system, he will be the official opposition leader. Now, some questions about whether or not he'd move into Stornoway and into the residence of the official leader of the opposition.
And as you look at that share of the vote from BC, this is not to say, in spite of the fact we've made this decision, that Reform isn't doing well in BC, because they clearly are, 45% of the vote, but it's not going to translate, we don't think, into a sweep proportions
they
anyway.
Would have had to take most of the 32 seats in British Columbia to get up there. They, and to be even numbers with a Bloc Québécois. And there's still some seats outstanding at this time of night in the province of Quebec, so they can't quite do that. But we certainly are seeing another regional bloc form there. We have a very powerful bloc in the province of Quebec, and in Points West, the Reform has really made some serious inroads there, and will be a powerful political force to be reckoned with. So we will have to be dealing with those regional questions when the House of Commons reconvenes in its new shape and configuration.
Regional questions and real regional tensions.
Yes.
I mean, we heard the town hall participants talking about not only the Bloc situation, but the real dominance of power now in terms of Western seats. The Bloc West, as it may end up being called in C terms. Preston Manning won't like that kind of a description because he did campaign hard. Other parts of the country didn't translate into seats, but it did translate into votes in a number of areas in southwestern Ontario and other parts of Ontario. Quickly, just like Pam, we're going to, on a night like this, or that many defeated Tory cabinet ministers, there are a lot of long faces in the country. One of them belongs to the, most recently, the Minister of External Affairs, Perrin Beattie, who's gone down to defeat tonight in Ontario, where every Tory lost his or her seat in Ontario. Perrin Beattie has been good enough to talk to us tonight. He's talking with Kelly Croke. Kelly?
Thank you, Peter. Mr. Beattie, this must be an unusual feeling for you. You've won 6 consecutive elections. You've been an MP for this riding since you were 22 years old, I believe. Did you expect this to happen tonight?
Kelly, you can never take any election for granted. I guess the only thing to keep in mind is even the Blue Jays don't win every single game.
What do you think went wrong? Why are you reduced to, at this point, 2 seats?
Not enough votes.
But was it something wrong with the campaign? Is this the Mulroney legacy that we're seeing? Was it the wrong leader, the wrong time?
I think what you're looking at is a whole range of chemistry that's unlike any we've seen before. There are new parties that have been created, which are regional in nature, and you have to look at it on a case-by-case constituency across the country. I think the important thing for us is to catch our breath, to have a chance to get caught up in our sleep for a little while. It doesn't look like we'll be into another election within the next few months, and there's plenty of time for us to look at what could have been done differently or where we go from here.
What does this mean for Canada, do you think, having the Bloc Québécois as the official opposition?
Well, I think it means that all of us who are committed federalists will just have to redouble our efforts and do everything we can to make sure the Confederation works. The key for us is to never, never, never give up on Canada. All of us must work together.
Now, you told your people here today that they must continue to, I'm sorry, that's all the time we have. Thanks for talking with me tonight.
Not at all. Thank you.
That's it from here.
Thank you very much, Kelly Crow. A couple of quick updates. Audrey McLaughlin still leading in her seat in the Yukon, but not enough votes yet to make a declaration. In Vancouver Centre, Kim Campbell still trailing in her seat. You see the overall numbers. You've been watching them all night. One thing we can report, and it was much discussed before the campaign started, and that was the number of women who were running in the election this time by the various parties. Whether or not, clearly, the two national parties led by women, neither one are doing well. But it's interesting to note that already tonight, of the declared elects, 43 of the members of the House of Commons will be women, at least 43. We're waiting to see those BC results. And at 43 already, that has surpassed the record number of women elected in 1988, which was 38. So news comes in various forms over the evening. That piece of news, 43 women elected to the House of Commons, more than any other time in Canadian parliamentary history. We've taken a couple of breaks tonight to get away from the punditry and the analysis and the numbers to look at the election through perhaps a different vehicle, and that one is comedy. If you're a regular watcher of CBC, especially on Monday nights, one of the hot new tickets in town is a program called This Hour. Has 22 minutes. It runs on Monday night at 10:30 in your region. A couple of regions it's roughly 10:30 now. This is what This Hour has 22 minutes has to say tonight on the election.
Thank you, Peter, and welcome back, Canada, to This Hour Has 22 Minutes' election coverage. Preston Manning won his seat tonight and is on his way to Ottawa. For those Canadians who do not recognize Preston Manning yet, he sort of looks like a cross between Mr. Dress-Up and sort of a Jimmy Stewart's evil twin brother thing happening. Enjoy.
I personally don't know why anyone would run for public office. If you're really looking for trouble, why not just move to Detroit and open a liquor store?
And we apologize for an earlier report. The Marxist-Leninist Party did not, in fact, sweep Alberta as reported earlier. We apologize to repeat, no Marxist-Leninists have been elected in Alberta.
In a last-ditch attempt to appear to be connecting with minorities, Preston Manning attended Boomy Day celebrations with a group of East Indians in Calgary today, but he just seemed uncomfortable.
And well, the NDP have actually eclipsed the Progressive Conservative Party, and oh, this just in, hell has frozen over. And the pact that Brian Mulroney made with the devil in 1984, well, that's just about up. And you know what that means, guys? It's conga time! Mulroney is no more. Hey, 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 he's no more. Hey, Mulroney is 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 no more. Hey, he's no more. Hey, Mulroney.
Well, a very different look at election night 1993 from the comedy group This Hour Has 22 Minutes. Just starting off on CBC television this year, and they've got off to a great start tonight. You will be voting on their performances tonight, just as you voted on the politicians' performances throughout today. The results of that vote showing a huge Liberal majority. 180 seats. We're saying the Bloc Québécois will form the official opposition. They're at 53, and they've hit their ceiling. Reform still racking up seats and leads in BC, but we've had a good look at the numbers, and we are convinced that as well as they're doing in BC, they cannot catch up to the Bloc Québécois. So those are your numbers as you look at them now, and CBC's election coverage continues in just a moment. And welcome back to the CBC's Election 93 coverage. Glad you're with us tonight as we look at these numbers. A huge Liberal majority shaping up. The Bloc Québécois is the official opposition. Reform still picking up seats. We are convinced, though, they cannot catch up. The numbers just don't exist. Only 6 seats still to be heard from tonight. If all of them headed Reform's way, you can see how close it would be. Many of these are still not decided yet, of course, but you see how close it would be even if the 6 still to be reported in British Columbia come in and fall into the Reform section. They're not going to quite catch up to the Bloc Québécois. The share of the vote on a national basis, the Liberals at 44%, the Tories at 16%. It's only meant 2 seats for them. The Bloc Québécois also at 16%, but obviously all concentrated in one province, province of Quebec. It's meant more than 50 seats, 53 at last count for them. Reform, 15%, much of it bunched up in Western Canada, and it is delivering seats, and a lot of them, well into the 40s now. The NDP at 6%, it's meant more seats than the Tories. At the moment, 6 to 7 seats for the NDP. Some of those seats yet to be decided. Various other parties in the country have accumulated 3%. We've heard of no riding anywhere where the National Party has made any progress at all. They certainly have not elected any members tonight, and that includes their leader, Mel Hurtig, in Edmonton. Pamela.
Let me introduce our political panel to this point. Hugh Segal is here, Stephen Lewis, Heather Reisman, Tom Flanagan. I guess I just have to ask this one question as we're waiting for all these results in British Columbia at this point. And Tom Flanagan, I'm going to come back to you at this. You're very close to the bloc numbers, despite the fact that they're ahead. Any suggestion that you might try and appeal to Tories, the Hugh's remaining 2 Tories, and try and challenge them in any way, or you really wouldn't consider that?
Well, it's not my decision to make, but I certainly don't think that Preston Manning will, and I would not advise him to. The whole appeal of reform is as a new party which has many different things to offer to the voters, and for its first official act in the new House of Commons to invite in politicians from other parties would be nonsensical.
So that wouldn't work, so you just deal with the bloc and say that's the fact of life?
Well, I think this, regardless of official opposition status, this has to be an extremely satisfying result for the 100,000 members of the Reform Party to have over 40 members, to have swept 2 provinces with the 2 most dynamic economies in the country, to have also elected members in Manitoba and Saskatchewan, and to have gotten 20% of the popular vote in Ontario. This is as much as one could ever have reasonably hoped for.
Hugh, fair statement about what Canadians have said tonight and how the new Canada looks?
Well, I think the Reform Party has done well, and I think they deserve credit for that, as does Prime Minister-designate Chrétien.
Campbell.
It's just hard. It's just hard. It'll get easier. It's just hard. And I think the message to the Conservative Party is, if you take the Conservative Party vote that Mr. Mulroney got consecutively for us, and if you divide it in 3, chances are we're not going to do very well, and that's what happened to us tonight fundamentally. But I think it's an opportunity, unburdened by too many parliamentary duties, to begin the process of restructuring and rebuilding the party, focusing on what makes us different and distinct from the other parties, building from the grassroots level up. I think it can work for others, it can work for us, and Canadians have sent us the message. They want us to go out and do that to earn their trust again, and I don't think we should be discouraged. We should embrace the task.
I guess, Stephen, who is there to keep an eye on Heather Reisman and her Liberals? They've got this whopping majority across the country, and what Canadians have been saying through the course of this campaign is it's dangerous when you give people all that power. They forget about all the things they promised you during a campaign.
And that will happen inevitably to the Liberals, as it has happened to others, and the media will go on a rampage of performing the role of the official opposition. You'll take great fun at eviscerating Liberals, as you have done to others. But I think within the House of Commons there is still the voice of the Democratic left. I'll admit to you, I'm quite devastated by what's happened to social democracy tonight, but I also understand that we've been in 4th place before in 1962 and 1963. I remember it from my own father's candidacy and incumbency at the time. So I think that the Tories will come back. In fact, I think it's time to utter the most heretical view of all. I think that reform is indeed a passing phenomenon, and this cyclical reassertion of more modest but more representative parties of left, center, and right will happen cyclically in Canada as it has happened in other countries.
I hope we have time to pursue that about whether these are phenomena, but I want to bring Heather in just for a word about
center and right will happen cyclically in Canada as it has happened in other countries.
I hope we have time to pursue that about whether these are phenomena, but I want to bring Heather in just for a word about whether or not what will keep the Liberals in check.
I think the same thing that we were talking about a couple of minutes ago, that the Liberal Party today is a bit of the Trudeau Liberals, a bit of the Turner Liberals, a bit of the Jean Chrétien, Paul Martin, and I think that's one thing. But overall, I think we as Canadians should feel pretty good tonight. I think the democratic process has worked, and not only for the election, but it has worked in the last number of years to bring these various regional groups in.
Well, when we reconvene again, we will discuss that whole question of whether or not these are passing fancies tonight, some of the things we've seen on the political stage, or true change in our political system. Peter?
All right. Well, Pamela, one thing that may not be a passing fancy is whether or not Bloc is really going to end up as the official opposition tonight. We've analyzed the numbers. We say they're going to, but look at what's happened just in the last couple of minutes. You've had the Liberal leads in a couple of ridings in BC shorten and, in fact, drop, and the Reform is now leading in those ridings. So you've got Reform now leading or elected in 50 seats. So this just may not be over yet. Still 4 seats to be heard from. They'd all have to go Reform for Reform to get ahead of the Bloc, but they'd only need to go ahead in 3 of them to tie them. Then you have a really interesting constitutional situation as to who gets the offer as to leader of the official opposition in the nation. Anyway, at this moment, it is still unclear. A couple of changes in the last few minutes. We may just have to reconsider that call of making the Bloc, calling the projection as the Bloc as the official opposition party. So this story is not over yet. This is going to take a while before that decision is made. The big one, Liberal majority, that's clear. But who's going to finish number 2? Well, maybe that's not so clear. CBC election coverage continues in just a moment. So let's recap what Canadians have decided. A Liberal majority for Jean Chrétien, a stunning rejection of the Tories, and a Bloc Québécois leading at the moment for official opposition. Still a couple of ridings to be heard from in BC. That may make the difference. Reform could end up as the official opposition. Here are the standings right now. As we look at them, 177 for the Liberals, mostly elected, leading in 11. And that's where the problems come for the Bloc in the past few minutes, interestingly enough, as they've led and elected all 53 of their ridings. But some of those Liberal leads in BC, and I think one in Alberta, have turned around in the past few minutes. The Reform Party has taken the lead in a number of ridings. But as you see, the Reform situation, elected in 26, leading in 25. And in those 25, there are some very close leads that have bounced back and forth. So they're going to have to hang on to all those and do well in the couple of seats that are yet to come. Overall numbers, though, 177, 53 for the Bloc, 51 for Reform, 8 for the NDP. Almost certain now, but not final yet, that they're not going to have official party status. You can kiss the Tories goodbye, though, not only from government, but from official party status. They're not going to make it to 12 seats. And the share of the vote, 43.6% of the votes have gone Liberal tonight, 16.4 for the Tories, 15.6 for the Bloc Québécois, 15.5 for Reform, and growing as the numbers keep being counted in BC, and NDP under 6%.
Well, it really is an incredible night as we see these shifts going on throughout the night. The Liberals started on the East Coast and really built their lead. They ran into a bit of a block in the province of Quebec. And those numbers now as we head west are really changing. But the difference between those BQ numbers is that those are solid. They have elected 53. The Reform 53 that you see there on the screen, they're leading in half of them. They've elected half of them, and so some of those seats are going back and forth. So we still don't know any final results as we wait for the votes to be counted in British Columbia, just as we're waiting to see how Kim Campbell does. She's trailing at the moment in her riding in Vancouver Centre, the Liberal there, but no official numbers there either. So we'll be hanging on for a few minutes yet to see the final result of this election.
So it's a cliffhanger for the leader of the opposition. Who's he going to be? Reform Party leader Preston Manning, who has won his seat in Calgary, or Bloc Québécois leader Lucien Bouchard, who's won his seat in Quebec. At the moment, both sitting with 53 seats. The difference here, and it's an important difference right now, the Bloc 53 are all in the column, all accounted for, all elected MPs. For Reform, they're at 53 as a combination of elected and leading, and that's about half and half. A lot of those Reform seats yet to be decided. So the Bloc has the advantage, even though the numbers are tied right now. 2 ridings still to be heard from, and they are in British Columbia. So an important difference there for
And some
BC.
change is possible there on the NDP front as well. They're only elected in 3 seats, and there's other numbers that are changing there. They're leading in some. So there still is a big, fat question mark beside not only the overall result for the Reform Party, but then what that would mean in terms of who does form the official opposition. So as per usual, there are some interesting races. As we head west in this country, it's never over until it's over. Wasn't it Yogi Berra that said that?
That it was Yogi Berra. And he was right, just like he was right again as a baseball analogy a couple of nights ago when the Blue Jays came back with that stunning, remarkable bottom of the ninth victory to win the World Series. Don Newman is watching those ridings tip back and forth in British Columbia tonight. Don, what can you tell us?
Well, I can tell you, Peter, the tipping isn't over yet, and so we don't know how it is going to go. But we were talking earlier, could Reform make official opposition, beginning to look as though they might? Will the NDP keep their official party status in the House of Commons with 12 seats, beginning to look as though they won't? Let's take a look at the BC board if we can. The scoreboard, you see the Reform doing very well now, leading or elected in 22. The Liberals, though, in 6. And some of those seats were NDP seats. The NDP just down to 2. The NDP, those two, Sven Robinson in Vancouver, and this man in Kamloops, Nelson Rees, still ahead. 20 of 212 polls counted at the moment, but Nelson Rees, the deputy leader of the NDP, has a lead of 340, and it looks as though he may hang on to be one of those 9 New Democrats in the new House of Commons. Let's take a look at Sandwich Gulf Islands. Lynn Hunter won that riding in 1988. Really, the Reform helped elect her by splitting the Conservative vote. This time, the Reform, though, going all the way with a big lead now. As you see, Jack Fraser is leading, and the Liberal Alec Phillips is also in front of Lynn Hunter. That is not a seat that the NDP will hold on to tonight. Okanagan Silkameen, there you see Reform as well, pulling out fairly goodly there. Whitaker of the NDP taking the riding in 1988, but he is now well back, not only of Reform, but also of the Liberals. So there's another seat that is going to go Reform. The NDP not able to hold on. That's a riding right next to Nelson Rees's, but it didn't matter tonight for the now let's take a look. That's North Island Powell River. That was one of the Skelly brothers. That's Ray Skelly, who was at one time the NDP leader in British Columbia. Remember, in the last election, the 7 ridings on Vancouver Island all went NDP. Not this time, no. And here's one of the ridings that we've been looking at as well in Surrey North. And there you see the NDP are Jim Karpoff trailing both the Liberal and Bridgman, the Reform candidate. So the Reform doing very well in British Columbia, coming very close now to making the goal of official opposition. The NDP, with only those 2 leads, Sven Robinson and Nelson Rees, looks, Peter, as though they're going to fall short of their aim to remain an official party in the House of Commons.
But it does also look like they're going to be able to say at the end of the night that they beat the Tories, which is the first time in their history that they've been able to say that. Tories only with 2 seats showing so far tonight. Even more remarkable when you consider that they've captured over 2 million votes in the country tonight. But because of the way the system works and where those votes have spread, they has translated for them only into 2 seats. Once again, if you just joined us, that one other that is showing nationally is an independent running in Quebec. Here are the British Columbia overall numbers. Reform leading in 22 seats. The Liberals in 6, the NDP in 2, as Don just went through many of those ridings for you. Now, the important thing to remember, while the Bloc and Reform are tied overall, once again, and this is important to emphasize, because while the numbers show them tied, the Bloc has all their seats in hand already. They're all declared elected. Reform, many of those seats they're just leading in. I can tell you in half a dozen, the lead is less than 100 votes, so they're very close. So Reform may yet end up tonight as the official opposition, but everything's going to have to break in their favor for them. And as Don showed you just a few minutes ago, races like this, where the lead is not bad, it's over 200 votes. But here's the other kind of lead that is very short at the moment in the Vancouver Island riding of Esquimalt-Juan-de-Fuca, which is just a lead of 7 votes at the moment over Dave Barrett of the NDP, former NDP Premier of British Columbia. Here's another short lead, 7-vote lead for the Reform candidate in Vancouver South. So that gives you an indication that early counting going on in many of these ridings in British Columbia where the lead is close. This one, not so close. The Tory Mary Collins, former Minister of British now Health and former Associate Minister of Defence. Mary Collins running third.
But a lot of these races, Peter, may be going on well into the night when you do see results that are that close, even some recounts possibly.
So you never know. It may be a while yet before we know for sure who will be the leader of the opposition. It may well explain how Preston Manning has not spoken yet. He's watching these results coming in too, wants to know where is he standing by the end of the evening when he gets up to the microphone, and which mandate will he be expressing.
There's no constitutional precedent. Of course, we have all our researchers busy working on these very kinds of questions about what happens if there's a tie for official opposition leader. That's never happened before, and so there would have to be some questions asked and decisions made at that point about how you would decide, and whether or not one of the parties, the BQ or the Reform, would have to go and try and recruit some others to their side. What kind of arguments would be made? Would Federalists make an argument against the BQ that you can't have separatists leading the opposition? There's all sorts of questions that would be raised, at least politically, if not constitutionally, legally, and officially. So those are the kinds of things we'll be dealing with.
All right, we're going to flip to the other end of the country now. If we're looking at those BC results, we're going to go right into the hometown of Jean Chrétien in Shawinigan, Quebec, where Keith Bogue, who's been covering the Liberal campaign for us from day one, is standing by. And I guess in Shawinigan tonight, Keith, Jean Chrétien waiting to make his remarks as well as they wait to see the real landscape unfold.
Sure, they're waiting just like everyone else is to see what happens in Vancouver Centre, because the trigger for the appearance of Mr. Chrétien is going to be a phone call from Prime Minister Tim Campbell conceding the election to him, and only after that will he leave his cottage where we saw him watching the results earlier, and drop the 15 minutes it takes to get here and be among his supporters.
Okay, Keith, sorry, I just missed the tail end of that. So it's obviously it's going to be a while before we hear from Chrétien.
Depends, I guess, on how tight it really is in Vancouver Centre and how long it takes Prime Minister Campbell to make that call. His handlers who have been drifting in and out and talking to us have said that he would be here variously a half hour ago, 10 minutes ago. He still hasn't shown up, so I wouldn't care to predict when we will actually see him. So as you can see, people are drifting in here, and the mood is turning considerably more party-like as the evening goes on.
Okay, Keith Bogue reporting to us tonight from Shawinigan, where Jean Chrétien will be making a statement at some point later on in the evening. So far, the only leader we've heard from was the Bloc Québécois leader, Lucien Bouchard, and a chance now to talk about some of the things we heard from Lucien Bouchard as we're joined from Montreal by Jean-François Lisée, who is one of Quebec's leading political analyst, commentator, and writer for the magazine L'Actualité, and Denis Dawson, who was a former Liberal MP. Jean-François Lisée, you listened closely to Lucien Bouchard's remarks, both clearly to his supporters in Alma, overall the province of Quebec, and his attempt to talk to English Canada as well about the mandate he's received tonight. But what did you find particularly interesting in the remarks you heard tonight?
Well, I think he's been very consistent in the message that he brought to Quebecers all through the campaign, and for the 2 years he's been leader of the Bloc. And one thing that struck me very much is how great a match there is between the intent of the voters of the Bloc and what Lucien Bouchard has been saying. Of course, Quebecers have been polled to that in the last 2 weeks, and we have a pretty good picture of what they wanted, what motivated their vote. When we asked them up or down, do you favor sovereignty? 53% of all Quebecers said yes. And that's been a pretty stable figure for the last 4 years in a row. It never went below the 50% mark. So it's still there this week. When we asked Bloc voters if they favored sovereignty, 84% said yes. But then when we asked them, well, what do you want your Bloc MPs to do in Ottawa? Well, they were spread. Some said defend sovereignty. Others, most said, try to cut the deficit, try to help create jobs and defend the interests of Quebec. So what's happening here today is that Quebecers who voted for the Bloc are in favor of the principle of sovereignty. They realize, as Bouchard told them, that it wouldn't be done in Ottawa. They realize also that there's a kind of three-step plan afoot to bring them to sovereignty. They know this first step here today is not irreversible, but they know it makes the second step more likely because those 53 Bloc MPs will help the PQ in the next provincial election, and they know that the second step, the PQ going to power, will make the third step more likely, the referendum. Well, basically what I think today is that even though Quebecers have not made the decision in their mind, they are willing accomplices with the Bloc in making a step towards sovereignty.
Okay, I want to hear what Denis Dawson thinks of all that. Would you see it the same way as Jean-François does?
Well, basically, I think the challenge for the Liberal Party now will be to do exactly the opposite. We needed a majority to be able to face the Bloc challenge. We needed a strong Quebec presence. I think the 20-odd MPs coming out of Quebec, and very strong MPs like Paul Martin, André Ouellet, Cliff Lincoln, Dupuis, Marcel Massé, will have the team to be able to challenge exactly the next steps. And the relationship between the federal Liberals and the provincial Liberals will be very important. I think things have improved a lot during the last 3 or 4 months. We saw during the end of the campaigns that a lot of provincial Liberals were starting to support the Liberals. The disappearance of the Conservative Party as a political force in Quebec will, I think, bring on the alliance that exists provincially of center federalist forces in Quebec will now have to understand that they have to get together and work against the Bloc and work against the PQ, because that's what they're going to be doing against us. Because not so much for the next challenge as far as the provincial election is concerned, but also the impending referendum, whether there is or not a crisis in the Constitution.
Okay, I want a quick last comment out of Jean-François Lisée. When we are watching these numbers tonight and we are seeing the race for second place, we were pretty sure the Bloc had it. They may still end up getting it. Obviously, a lot of Westerners, especially tonight, would like to see reform, but perhaps a lot of people in Ontario as well, would like to see reform in second place. Does it make any difference, you think, to Bloc Québécois members whether they're the opposition party or not in Ottawa?
It was not an objective for them. It came as the cherry on the sundae. And in fact, it's true that Lucien Bouchard was not sure if he wanted the cherry. There were advantages. He would have met all foreign leaders coming into Ottawa. That would have been a great asset for a separatist leader. But it would have been also a problem in dealing with the rest of English Canada. Now, of course, if Preston Manning is the leader of the opposition, what are the Quebec taxpayers to say of this man who's supposed to represent the whole country and who did not carry a single or did not even show up in Quebec during the campaign?
But did Quebecers realize that's the same thing being said in the reverse way from outside of Quebec?
Exactly. So the question will be asked of him, how can he do that? But basically, I think Lucien Bouchard is half relieved if it turns out that he won't be the leader of the opposition. He was not betting the house on that.
All right. Quick last word from you, Denis Dawson, on the same point.
Well, I would hope that he's not the official opposition, basically, because I think that would just create more of polarization. I think the Liberal Party will have a lot of things to confront during the next few months, and having to confront the polarization vis-a-vis the opposition being the Bloc, I think would be an added complication. But that being said, I think that with a strong presence, they can deal with all those problems now that they've got a good caucus, a good leader, and a good position as far as having a majority government.
All right, Denis Dawson, Jean-François Lisée, thanks very much for joining us tonight from Montreal.
Thank you.
So the overall numbers, Liberals leading are elected in 176, but that key race, the race for second place right now, it's a dead heat between Reform and the Bloc Québécois, but remember, the Bloc seats are already there. They have them. They've already been elected, all 53. Reform still in a lot of tight races. That's why you've seen that 53 number bounce up and down to 54, back to 52. Still one seat to be heard from. We're watching closely to the other races. The races for Conservative leader, Prime Minister Kim Campbell in Vancouver Centre. She is trailing by 400 or 500 votes. The race hasn't been declared yet, but she is clearly in serious trouble in her own riding, very much the same way as all of her cabinet colleagues, with the exception of one, Jean Charest, ironically, the only Tory cabinet minister to hold his seat tonight in the Quebec riding of Sherbrooke. He has won that seat, and Elsie Wayne was the other Tory who won in New Brunswick. In St. John, New Brunswick, the former mayor of New Brunswick, winning her seat. At the moment, the only two Tories destined for the House of Commons, the NDP at 9 and one independent in Quebec. Audrey McLaughlin, last word we have is still she is leading in Yukon.
Still some questions there. So we head into these final crucial hours with the second biggest question of the night still unknown. We do know that there's a massive Liberal majority government. We do know that Jean Chrétien won his seat tonight, and a lot of people thought that was in question, but he is there. Preston Manning has won his seat. Lucien Bouchard has won his. So questions about Audrey McLaughlin and also about Kim Campbell and about the future of two political parties in this country, about the future of the NDP and the Progressive Conservatives. What do they do now? Do they start that rebuilding process or not? The NDP still gathering some momentum at this point, or some seats and support in the province of British Columbia, some traditional turf there for them, but the PCs aren't going to make any more movement tonight. So there they sit without official party status after two consecutive majority governments. It's quite stunning.
Yeah, as you say, not possible for the Tories, still possible, but a long shot for the NDP. They got to turn a couple of those seats where Reform is leading in British Columbia to reach the 12 figure. It doesn't look likely at the moment. Let's go back to Shawinigan as we wait now. Obviously, everything's on hold as we wait to see for this battle of second place before the different leaders come out to speak. When Jean Chrétien speaks, he'll be speaking in Shawinigan. He isn't out yet. Keith Bogue is there. Keith.
Here, I'm standing here with Jean Chrétien's brother, Dr. Michel Chrétien. Doctor, you're, I believe you said a medical scientist. Could you just briefly tell me what that...
Well, I work on brain chemistry, so medical scientist is okay.
Okay, now you're a little younger than Jean Hick, about 2 years younger, but you grew up in a large family where you were probably closest to his age. How do you feel now that your brother is going to be the Prime Minister of Canada?
We all feel very great because Jean has a lot of courage to go on, and I think he merits everything that, and he deserves everything that is coming along with him tonight.
What do you think is the strongest quality that he has from a personal point of view that he brings to the job?
Perseverance, and also not changing often his mind, and a lot of courage and a lot of brain power, I would say.
When we were talking earlier, I think you also mentioned the capacity that you believe he has for sharing, being generous with people, and we were talking about how he has allowed Paul Martin and Aviva Hozek, for instance, to take a lot of credit. Is that right?
Yeah, he's a rassembleur. He's a man who can, he's a real leader who can bring together a good team, and I think he's a great team. And with that, I believe that he will run a country that with great success.
All right, well, thank you very much for joining us tonight, and enjoy the evening. Thank you, Doctor. Peter?
All right, Keith, thanks very much. We can tell you now, Audrey McLaughlin has held her seat in Yukon, the leader of the NDP, winning in Yukon tonight. 8 other NDP members. Cheering you here is Stephen Lewis, not far from you here. Audrey McLaughlin leading, and Hugh Stegall, leading tonight, and as you can see, it's shaping up now as a convincing victory in Yukon. There was some question about whether or not Audrey McLaughlin would win her seat. She has, just like there were questions about Jean Chrétien winning his seat, Preston Manning winning his seat. They all have, along with Ottawa in British Columbia. So for Preston Manning, a moment coming up soon where he'll be speaking not only to his supporters but to the rest of the country tonight on his performance.
Now, he's probably been working the phones, as have everyone else, trying to figure out what happens if there actually is a tie for second place. And of course, as we've said before, there's no constitutional precedent, but there are ways to deal with this.
Yeah, and the way is the Speaker of the House of Commons has got to cast the deciding vote on this if it's a tie. But first of all, before you can do that,
we have an elected speaker in our system of parliament these days, so that whole system's changed. So you can imagine, we're speculating here, of course, if we really do see a tie for the rest of the evening between the Bloc Québécois and the Reform for who would form the official opposition, Parliament would have to convene. Then all the MPs would have to let their names stand or not to become Speaker of the House of Commons. We might have a race of 7 or 8 people running for that particular job. They're elected by their colleagues. Then that race would be very much influenced by where they stood on this issue of who should be the opposition.
right, and the other factor that comes into play here, because you heard a lot of talk about it in the dying days, is whether any elected Tories would join Reform and join Preston Manning here as we see him enter the hall in Calgary. Unlikely, considering who they are. Jean Charest, can't see him going to Reform. Elsie Wayne in St. John, New Brunswick, also unlikely.
Unlikely the Reformers would ask, because they don't want to be seen to be doing deals. Their whole notion is to be different than the other traditional parties.
So Preston Manning, Kevin Tibble's there beside him. Kevin, can you get a word in there?
A lot of cheering going on there tonight.
Mr. Manning, yes. I'm wondering if A, you're disappointed with what happened in Ontario, and B, are you happy with the rest of the country in the West?
We're pretty pleased with what happened tonight. We're pretty pleased.
Well, he says he's very, very pleased, Peter. That's about it for now, I believe.
Okay, Kevin, thanks very much. Good work in there. It's awfully loud in the Calgary Convention Centre tonight. Not surprisingly, as Preston Manning hugged and screamed at by supporters in Calgary. Big numbers for him in Alberta tonight. Also in BC, still in contention for the number 2 spot overall on the night, as you can see behind the Bloc Québécois at the moment.
It's a pretty dramatic rise for this party. They were sitting with 1 seat, 1 in a by-election, and they've gone upwards of 50 at this point. He's a very happy man tonight.
Well, the numbers show them now tied once again with the Bloc Québécois. No seats yet to be heard from, but many of the Reform seats still not declared victories yet. They're just leading. For the Bloc, we keep reminding you, they've hit their ceiling, all elected 53 seats. So we'll see what happens. Preston Manning up at the microphones with his wife, getting ready to address his supporters, and through the magic of television, viewers across the country, fascinated, interested.
Maybe he's figured out a way to challenge Lucien Bouchard that none of the experts have thought of. So we'll see what he has to say on the topic of who should be and who will be the opposition if those numbers are very close. But as Peter's been saying, there's the Bloc numbers are real, 53, that's elected. The Reform numbers, they've only elected 30 plus, and they're just leading in the other 20 seats there, which gives them the overall figure of 53.
But for Preston Manning, he's been a giant killer in this campaign. Nobody was talking about him running as a potential opposition leader at the beginning of the campaign. But he's done extremely well here tonight. And the introduction about to happen now of Preston Manning.
What did we say yesterday in the Saddle Dome? I said Calgary Southwest is going to send a leader to Ottawa. And so Calgary Southwest has done that, and Preston and I are just incredibly grateful to all of the workers in Calgary Southwest. Your support is absolutely phenomenal, folks. There is a massive, massive job ahead of all the reformers. I'm going to let Preston take it from there.
Well, I want to thank thank you, and I want to congratulate you all on the breakthrough for reform which has been achieved this evening. Thank you. I want to congratulate all the reform candidates, those that were successful and those that were not this evening. And I want to pay tribute to them, the enormous effort which they put into making this evening possible. Let's salute these reform candidates again. I also want to take this opportunity to congratulate Mr. Chrétien and the Liberals on their formation of a majority government. But I think I can safely say that tonight the political landscape of Canada has been significantly altered. And a different political era has begun in our country. The old Federalist parties, the Liberals and Conservatives, have been beaten by the separatist PQ in Quebec almost 2-1. This illustrates dramatically the need to develop a new federalism capable of competing more effectively with both the PQ and the BQ. And reformers elected to the 35th Parliament are committed to developing that new federalism. Right. Now the influence of the New Democratic Party has been drastically reduced in this Parliament. And so the task of representing real grassroots democracy will be taken up in the next Parliament by reform members of Parliament. The Progressive Conservative Party, which governed Canada for 9 years, has now been reduced to a virtual shadow of its former self. And the task, therefore, of representing fiscal responsibility in the federal parliament will also be taken up by reform members of parliament. And while we wish the new Liberal government well, we also say that if the new Liberal government, like its predecessor, fails to meet the test of developing a new federalism or bringing federal spending under control, then it too may go the same way as the Progressive Conservatives in the next election. Now, tonight is not the time, however, for political confrontation. Now is the time. He still wants to fight. Now is the time for all the members elected to make a new commitment to making the new Parliament work for all Canadians. And I hereby make that commitment on behalf of reformers going to the next Parliament. We do not intend to conduct ourselves as a traditional opposition party. We intend to conduct ourselves as constructive, not destructive critics of government policy. When we consider a government policy or proposal to be in the interests of our constituents and all of Canada, we will support it, even if it comes from the government. When we consider a government policy or proposal ill-advised, we will counter it not with just a welter of negative criticism, but with a constructive alternative and a constructive federalist alternative. Whenever the government proposes to spend money, your money, and we have a feeling the Liberals may propose to spend money, we will act as the fiscal conscience of Parliament. We will ask the questions that never got asked in that last Parliament. Is the expenditure necessary? How much will it cost? Where are you going to get the money taxed for borrow, and why couldn't we spend less? That'll be our issue. Whenever the government proposes any major public policy initiative, we will also act as a democratic conscience of Parliament, asking, were the people truly consulted? What do the people think? Do the people approve or disapprove of this course of action? The democratic conscience of the next Parliament. So by these actions, we propose to make our contribution to making the next Parliament work for you and for Canadians. Reformers, we are on our way to a new Canada. To express some very deep thank yous this evening, and I'm almost afraid to get into this because there are so many people that we have to thank. I'm going to take probably the next month to write almost 10,000 thank you letters to people right across the country without whose help this evening would not be possible. But let me start here right in Calgary and Calgary Southwest. First of all, I would like to ask my family to come up here. They put up with a lot. So we have the family up here. I'd also like to ask Harry Robinson and Ruth, my campaign manager, to come up here. Come up here, Harry. Where's Harry? Come on, Harry. Come on, Harry. Don't be shy.
All right, Preston Manning, bringing everybody up on stage now. After speaking to supporters and Canadians alike about his performance tonight, as you've been watching those numbers reflected, the Bloc has edged up a seat. One of the close ridings in Quebec, it seems to have turned around a bit with the Bloc and the Liberals, and the Bloc is now ahead 54, Reform settling in at 52, but a lot of close races in BC still to be determined.
Yes, we should mention the Reform did get themselves a seat in the province of Ontario. It looked for a while as if the Liberals had taken all 99. In fact, they took 98. Reform took one seat in a riding where Jean Chrétien had parachuted in one of his star candidates. So in fact, they made the tiny breakthrough in the province of Ontario.
All right, Audrey McLaughlin is speaking in Yukon right now. Let's join her speech to her supporters in Whitehorse.
And I especially want to thank all of you who are here tonight, all of those supporters and campaign workers across the territory who worked so hard on my behalf. I know it was tough with a candidate who was traveling across the country from sea to sea to sea and had a little less time to spend at this sea, but I do appreciate the work that you did, the time that you put in on my behalf, your dedication and your support
and your hard work have meant so much to me. And tonight, we share this victory. Thank you.
Audrey McLaughlin has won her own seat, but obviously a difficult night as the NDP dropped from 43 seats to 9 tonight.
Those who supported me and my electoral team here in the Yukon. It's not very easy to conduct a campaign for a candidate who crosses the country for her party. Your commitment, your support, and your work have counted a great deal for me this evening. It's our victory. Thank you.
I'd like to also just quote something. Robert Service wrote these words about the Yukon. It's the great, big, broad land way up yonder. It's the forest where silence has lease. It's the beauty that thrills me with wonder. It's the stillness that fills me with peace. My friends, the Yukon is a place of enormous beauty, strong and vibrant communities, and remarkable people, and I am proud to call the Yukon my home.
And from Audrey McLaughlin to Kim Campbell, who is now speaking to her supporters in Vancouver Centre. She is trailing by more than 1,000 votes in Vancouver Centre tonight. Her party decimated across the land, only 2 seats left. A majority government to 2. They won't even have official party status. For Kim Campbell,
thank you very much. Thank you.
A disastrous
Thank
day
you. You
for
always
her
have
party.
great taste, Phil.
Here are her remarks.
Gee, I'm glad I didn't sell my car. My dear friends, Canadian democracy has spoken loudly and clearly today, and I accept the judgment of the Canadian people with disappointment, but without reservation. My first words are to thank all my friends and supporters in Vancouver Centre who've worked so hard on my behalf, both during this election and over the last 5 years. It has been a privilege to serve you in Ottawa and to represent your interests in the House of Commons. I share the disappointment, however, of all of my colleagues who were unsuccessful tonight, and I offer to them my thanks and my congratulations for their contribution to Canadian democracy. The clear winners of today's election are Mr. Chrétien and his party, and I congratulate them. I also offer Mr. Chrétien and his wife Aline my best wishes for the future. I know, as few do, the dramatic changes that will occur in their lives and how much they will need the support and goodwill of all Canadians. I have conveyed to Mr. Chrétien that I will do everything to ensure that the transition from our government to the one that he will be forming is orderly, efficient, and rapid. I also offer congratulations to all the candidates from all parties who were elected or re-elected tonight. In particular, I wish to offer congratulations to the leaders of the Reform Party, the New Democratic Party, and the Bloc Québécois for their personal success. I want to address a special message to all members and supporters of the Progressive Conservative Party. Our party has a proud heritage in Canada. For 126 years, from the days of Sir John A. Macdonald and Georges Etienne Cartier, we have brought a broad national vision, a national vision of tolerance, compassion, and respect for the diversity of our country. This national vision remains as relevant and needed in Canada today as at any other time in our history. I believe profoundly in the purpose, principles, and future of our party. Now is the time for all of us to come together and begin the process of renewal and rebuilding. I will be meeting in the days and weeks ahead with the Cabinet, caucus, candidates, and members of the National Executive to determine this process. Success was not ours tonight, but success can be ours tomorrow. When we look at the popular vote tonight, we see that as many Canadians voted for the Progressive Conservative Party as voted for the Bloc Québécois or voted for the Reform Party. That was not reflected in seats, and we accept the reality of the electoral process in Canada. But it should remind us that there are many Canadians who look to us to represent them, to articulate their vision of this country. We must tonight, as Progressive Conservatives, dedicate ourselves anew to the national goals for which our party has always stood. I
would like to thank particularly the men and women of Quebec who supported us. In the last 10 years, our party has deepened its roots in Quebec, and its roots are still alive. I would like to greet the candidates who share the ideal of a united Canada, which respects diversity. I'd like to thank them for their loyalty and their dedication. I remain convinced that the men and women of Quebec cannot fully achieve their aspirations unless they stay within the country that they helped to build and that they enrich with their own distinct personality. Canada is not only an idea or a political system. It's not simply the result of history or geography. Canada is the expression of our values, of our hopes and our pride. And my greatest honor would have been to have expressed those values, those hopes, and that pride as Prime Minister of Canada.
This election has allowed new members and new parties to bring a strong message to Ottawa. As Canadian citizens, let us resolve that no member of Parliament, no political party, will ever be permitted to forget the most fundamental message of all. A message that comes to us from the early days of our history, and that we have the responsibility of carrying on to future generations. That simple but strong message is that we are, above all, proud Canadian citizens. I want to say to you very deeply from the bottom of my heart how grateful I am to you for your support and affection over the years. And I know there is deep disappointment in this room tonight. But I want to remind you of the importance of taking the broad perspective, the historical perspective. Many fine leaders, many fine parties, many fine movements in history have had their setbacks, have had their periods in the wilderness. The most important thing is that we know we had a message and a vision that we believe in deeply. And many Canadians went to the polls today to share that belief. And we have a responsibility to bind our wounds, to perhaps have a good surf into a Kleenex, and to come back to continue to work together as we always have, with love and dedication, a good sense of humor, a sense of joy, and a sense of purpose. That's what I think of when I think of my life as a member of Parliament, and when I think of the honor that I have had to be the leader of your party.
Incredible moment here as Kim Campbell wraps up her remarks. Tragic story for her in Vancouver Centre losing her own seat and her party losing power. While in Shawinigan, Jean Chrétien, the 20th Prime Minister of Canada, he will be heading towards the front of his stage to give his speech.
Meeting our candidates and our supporters. And I want to tell you that this party is strong. It is a strong organization, peopled with people of vision, enthusiasm, and deep love of country. Tonight has been a setback, but October the 26th changes nothing in terms of the strength of our organization and the dedication of our people. The Conservative Party is an important force in Canadian society, and our day in the sun will come again. That I promise you. Thank you again for your hard work, for your devotion, and for your affection. You know that I return them. Thank you very much, and consider yourselves hugged. Thank you.
Kim Campbell, for the past 123 days, the country's 19th Prime Minister. First woman Prime Minister in the country's history. But only a few more days before she will have to hand over power to the man on the left, Jean Chrétien, the incoming Prime Minister of Canada.
No indications from Ms. Campbell that she intends to be personal.
That's right, no indication on that yet. That story and that issue to wait for other days. To Shawinigan, Quebec now, where Jean Chrétien enters the room, mobbed as he has been. You've been watching for the last few minutes. Mobbed by his supporters. From his own riding, his wife Eileen beside him there as they head up to the front of their room.
He's had to wait, of course, because Ms. Campbell had to make her concession speech. It's proper political etiquette at this point. He would have to wait for that speech. And because of the time zones in this country and the voting on different hours, it was later for him, almost 1 o'clock in the morning in Shawinigan as he finally makes his way to the stage.
Final vote shaking down across the country now with the Bloc Québécois appearing that they will capture the opposition party, Reform, missing by a couple of seats, still a number of close races yet to be determined. And because of that, Reform may still be hoping that they can catch up to the Bloc. They moved up Bloc 53 to 54 after a recount, late recount by our people in one riding as the Bloc moved up to 54 seats in Quebec.
Amazing night for Jean Chrétien. A lot of people, both inside his party and outside his party, said he would never make it here. This is a job he would never hold, and he was not the right man for the job. And he has overcome a whole lot of obstacles and opposition for this particular night to become Prime Minister of Canada. It must be...
To put together one of the most stunning victories the Liberal Party has ever had, you got to go back to Louis Saint Laurent and see numbers like this.
It's almost a bonus for him. In a way, it's such a personal victory, and to have this huge victory.
Well, Preston Manning's wife introduced him in Calgary tonight as he gave his remarks after Reform's showing across the country. Jean Chrétien now will step right up to the microphone to address his supporters and a nation. You're looking at your next Prime Minister. Straightens his tie, checks his jacket, waves to the crowd, and here are his remarks.
We'll see if he delivers covers this Peter straight from the heart. In the last few days, I've been taking a look at his book written by Jean Chrétien. That's how he's always described his own words.
Straight from the heart.
Mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, les Canadiens et les Canadiennes ont
The men and
décidé,
women of Canada have decided
le temps est venu
the time has
de
come
travailler ensemble
to work together
pour mettre le pays sur la bonne voie.
to put the country back on the right track.
The people of Canada have spoken, and the time has come to bring the nation together. Je remercie la population
I'd like to
canadienne
thank the Canadian people
pour ce mandat énorme qu'ils
for
m'ont
this enormous mandate that they have entrusted to me.
I accept with humility the challenge to prepare Canada for the 21st century. Mes chers amis de Saint-Maurice,
My dear friends in Saint
vous
Maurice,
vous rappelez, il y a
you remember a few months ago in the same room,
j'avais dit que
I said
c'était mal
that
connaître Jean Chrétien que de prétendre que je
you
reviendrai-
would know Jean Chrétien
dans Saint-Maurice.
if you thought that I wouldn't come back to Saint Maurice. And you don't know the people of Saint Maurice if you think that we're not going to win this victory.
Vous le savez, j'ai toujours été
You know,
un fier Mauricien,
I've always been a proud
francophone,
Mauricien, a proud francophone,
québécois,
a proud
un fier
Quebecer,
Canadien.
and a proud Canadian.
Et je voulais représenter au Parlement
And
du Canada
I wanted to represent within the Canadian Parliament the people of the Saint Maurice riding.
Je vous remercie énormément
And
pour tout le
I'd
travail
like to
que
greatly
vous avez
thank you
accompli.
for all the work that you have done. I'd like to thank the team that worked for months
Parfois très difficile,
in sometimes very difficult
mais vous avez été
circumstances,
récompensé
but you were
de
rewarded
façon fantastique pour votre bon travail.
in a fantastic way for your good work.
I know what it's like to win, and I know what it's like to lose. A few minutes ago, I talked with Prime Minister Campbell, and I told her that she had led a very proud National Party under very difficult circumstances, with very little time to prepare for the election, and she has conducted herself with dignity, and I offer my congratulations and best wishes for the future. Je voudrais profiter de l'occasion
I would like to take advantage of this opportunity to congratulate Mr. Lucien Bouchard for his election in Lac-Saint-Jean and for the people who were elected with him. I hope that we can work together in order to solve the economic problems of our voters. I think that we have a very clear mandate to work on job creation and to restore the economy, and we should put constitutional quarrels on the shelf.
I don't know who will be the leader of the opposition, but, you know, for the last 10 days, it was kind of pleasant to see the fight for number 2 and not for number 1. But I'd like to congratulate Mr. Manning for his election in Calgary, and I'm looking forward to work with him in the House of Commons because we're all elected to bring about some progress in our land, and we will need the collaboration of all the Canadians, and I'm looking forward to work with him and his members. I'd like to congratulate very much Audrey McLaughlin. We share a lot of the same values. I've worked with her in the House of Commons. She's been extremely good. And under extremely difficult circumstances, she has shown a lot of courage and a lot of class. And I would like to congratulate all the candidates elected in my party across the land, in every province and territories but one. And I would like to say to those who ran for my party who did not win, je suis désolé que vous ayez perdu.
I'm sorry that you have lost.
Vous avez été toutes
But
et tous de fiers combattants.
you've all been proud fighters.
Durant toute la campagne, extrêmement fier
Throughout
de la
the campaign, I was very proud of the quality of our candidates
ont travaillé avec moi.
who worked with me.
Et vous savez, cette fois,
And you know, this time, I'm sorry that you can't accompany me in Ottawa.
il y a toujours
But
une seconde chance.
in life, there's always a second chance. That happened to me.
Tonight, as a very proud Liberal, I'm happy to accept the challenge of forming a government. I will think of the famous Liberal tradition of building a Canada that will always have in mind social justice and economic prosperity. And tomorrow I will want to form a government that will be a government for all Canadians, no matter how they voted tonight, because that is the task of a Prime Minister. And a majority government is not a blank check. A majority government is an opportunity. And I will work hard every day to earn your respect and your trust. We will govern this country talking all the time and keeping in mind Canadian values. These great Canadian values of generosity, sharing, tolerance, and understanding. Together we'll restore hope. We'll restore honesty and integrity in public life. But our mandate is very clear. We have to concentrate all our efforts on the economy to create jobs, to have economic growth, to give dignity to the workers who want to work across this land. I understand the frustration that led people to vote for the Bloc Québécois and the Reform Party, and we will not ignore these frustrations, but our challenge is to channel it positively. And I would like to say to my fellow Québécois qu'ici au Québec, j'aurais aimé mieux faire.
I would have liked to have had better results, but I'm satisfied with the effort that we've made. We had a very difficult slope to climb, and the challenge that we have right now is to win the trust of the population. And we are going to do it by giving people a good government. A good government which will restore confidence in the population and will bring back to public life honesty and integrity. A government which will concentrate on the economy, on job creation, and our task will be to prove that Canada is still the best solution for Quebecers, for French Canadians, for all Canadians.
Before I conclude, I would like to say thank you to the team of the Liberal Party across the land who have been so good, done a great job for me, and we had a great campaign. I don't want to name anybody because there are too many, but there is one person I would like to say a great thank you. Je voudrais remercier le conseiller, le pilier le plus proche de moi,
the closest pillar, the closest advisor to me, Aline, who was with me.
Quelle femme,
what a woman,
quelle conseillère,
what an advisor,
et durant cette très longue carrière,
and during this very long political career,
et je dois vous dire que je ne
there were
serais
many
pas
sacrifices,
aujourd'hui
and I wouldn't be here
si elle n'avait
today
pas été là.
if she wasn't next to me.
As we approach the beginning of a new century, the world faces great challenges, and Canada has a positive role to play. We will take advantage of our geopolitical position, neighbor to the United States, the greatest democracy in the world, and having a gate on the Atlantic and on the Pacific. Canada is very well placed and will take advantage of that. J'ai confiance dans les ressources
I
extraordinaires
have
de ce
confidence
pays
in the extraordinary resources of this country, and especially in the citizens of this country. I know that the task that awaits us will be very difficult, and that we'll have to work hard in order to solve our problems. But the effort and the work have never frightened Canadians.
I would like to make sure that during my mandate, I will always appeal to the best in every citizen of our land. I will try to bring us together by appealing not to what divides us, but what unites us. We have together to realize the hopes and the dreams of Canadians. We have a lot of work to do. Together, we will work hard, and Canada will enter the 21st century as a proud, united, independent, generous, prosperous nation. Le Canada, mes chers amis, a un avenir fantastique.
Canada, my dear friends, has a fantastic future.
Et bonsoir.
Thank you, everybody.
Jean Chrétien did a thunderous ovation in his hometown of Shawinigan tonight. He's won his seat, and his Liberal Party has won 176 others, a massive majority government for the Liberals tonight. And in his speech tonight, trying to appeal not only to people in his riding, but to Quebecers and all Canadians, that his government is going to try and pay attention to all their needs and to try and deal with the various tensions that inevitably will come out of tonight with a big bloc representation from Quebec and reforms, big representation, especially from Alberta and BC. They do have ridings elsewhere, but especially in Alberta and BC.
Mr. Chrétien has always been personally very popular in Alberta and British Columbia in his own leadership races, those kinds of things. And I think he was very smart tonight to signal to the reform supporters that he intends to listen to their demands for some changes in the way the House of Commons works. It's not something that he would oppose particularly anyway, although one always fears with majority government that the rules don't ever have to change again once they're in power. So some interesting signals there from Jean Chrétien. And I think we really heard from all of the leaders tonight, nice words for their colleagues in the parliamentary process. And you wonder if maybe the message from the public didn't get through, that they're sick and tired of the partisan battling and fighting that they see on television, in Parliament. The kinds of things we've heard through our town halls throughout this election campaign. Quit knocking the other guy, just tell us what you're going to do. And it seems all of the leaders have kind of said, okay, we're going to try that for a while and be a little nicer to each other.
Well, we'll see when they all get there, in fact, whether they deliver. And it's for, when I'm listening to Preston Manning talking about delivering new politics to Ottawa, as soon as he gets there, within seconds, he becomes a part of the political establishment in Ottawa, and trying to look like the outsider when you're inside can be awfully difficult.
Yes, it can be very difficult, but he does have a huge chunk of power. Those seats, as we've been saying all night, still undecided, but the Bloc still has an edge now on becoming the official opposition. But very powerful Bloc for the reform.
Still 10 seats yet to be decided from, to be finally decided across the country. They're all in Western Canada now, from Manitoba right to BC, and that may make the difference for reform as to whether or not they end up in the opposition role or not. Joe Schlesinger is with us, the CBC's chief political correspondent. Joe, you listened to all those speeches patiently. Your thoughts?
Well, I thought that Manning's speech was harder than the two of you thought, in the sense that he said, we'll be there asking the questions, we'll be there checking and challenging. He sees himself as coming in as a new force into Ottawa, and he will do that. Bouchard was much more conciliatory. He was more saying, we want to end joblessness, we want to bring prosperity to the country, we will cooperate, which was rather odd when you think of the fact that Bouchard is a man who is a sovereignist.
What did you think of Chrétien, the new Prime Minister, his speech tonight and where he was trying to reach out?
On nights like these, the victor's speech is the easiest. All he has to do is be gracious. And I thought that Kim Campbell's line about being happy that she hadn't traded in her car was a great political line, and it shows her gutsiness, shall we say.
Yeah, well, she certainly did appear gutsy, and a terrible night for the Conservative Party, but making the point, as Hugh Segal was making earlier, 2 million Canadians, more than 2 million Canadians, did vote for the Tories tonight. It only translated into 2 seats, humiliating defeat, but her argument is there's still a constituency there to build on to try and bring the party back.
There's a constituency there for conservatism. Conservatism isn't dead. I mean, if you look at the vote, add up the Reform Party and the Conservative Party, there's a new conservatism there, which Reform tried to bring about. I have here this old reminder. It's the Tories had a red book, a blue book, the Liberals had a red book, and this is red, blue, and black, and it comes from...
Right up. Gee, familiar name on the bottom corner of the
Ernest Manning wrote it with his son Preston in 1967. And this is what they had to say then. The Social Credit Party and Mr. Manning, the elder Manning, who had been Premier of Alberta as head of the Social Credit Party, the Social Credit Party can make its maximum contribution by doing everything in its power to encourage and assist in bringing about an effective reorganization of the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada. Boy, did the son reorganize the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada.
Along the lines that his father thought he might be able to do.
Despite what you were saying, conservatism is still alive in Canada.
All right, well listen, we'll get to Hugh's comments in a moment. I don't think he didn't say the word, but we'll hear them in a few moments. First of all, I know the people in British Columbia have been awfully patient in the last hour. While the national leaders were speaking, you're waiting for your results. Don Newman has been looking at the ridings and how they're falling. which way they're going in British Columbia tonight, and here he is now, Don.
Well, Peter, still some of the ridings alive in British Columbia. Not all of the results final yet. In fact, how some of them turn out could still affect which party ends up as the official opposition. Take a look. There you have Reform with a total of 24, the Liberals with 6, the NDP just with 2 at the moment, and they are Sven Robinson and Nelson Rees, 2 of the stalwarts in the party. But remember, they had 19 seats in the last parliament. But here's a riding they held. They're not going to have this time. Reform is in the lead, but it is not finished yet. Only 75 of 210 polls in New Westminster Burnaby. But the Reform candidate with the lead over the Liberal, Don Black, the New Democrat, she is in the race, but not really very close. Vancouver East, Margaret Mitchell, one of the stalwarts of the NDP. This is a close race. This may be a pickup yet for the NDP. But as you see, Anna Tirana, the Liberal, now has a lead of 429 votes in Vancouver East, a long-time NDP seat. Margaret Mitchell, a long-time member of the House of Commons for the NDP. Now, Nanaimo Cowichan on Vancouver Island, this is now, we've given this one, the decision desk has given the Reform Party the lead, or not only the lead, given it the riding. Dave Stupich was the NDP member, but he runs a poor third, and that is one riding that may help yet the Reform Party make it to the official opposition. Vancouver Quadra, who was the last MP from Vancouver Quadra? John Turner, the last man to be in not a dissimilar situation from Kim Campbell this evening. Ted McQuinney, Ed McQuinney, the constitutional lawyer who became Ted McQuinney, the Liberal candidate. He has held on to that riding for the Liberals, but he will not be the lone Liberal from British Columbia as John Turner was. You see there, Reform Party running a fairly strong second, but McQuinney holding on to Vancouver Quadra for the Liberals. So that's the way it looks for the moment. There are a couple other ridings still open. Vancouver South is one of them. That is John Fraser. Speaker John Fraser, retiring Speaker of the House of Commons, his riding. The Liberals have been leading that. Reform still has a shot at that. So those are the way it's shaping up for the moment, Peter, in British Columbia.
All right, Don, thank you very much. It was interesting you reporting on Ed McQuinney. We used to know him as Ed McQuinney when he was and still is, a constitutional expert. He's now seemed to develop a Ted McQuinney stance in his riding in Vancouver when he's running over the past weeks and a little more than a month of the national election campaign. But it was interesting. He was asked in his constitutional expert's hat a little while ago what he thought of the possibility of a Bloc Québécois, a separatist party's representation in the federal House. He reminded people that the Irish separatists used to have representation in the British House of Commons back in the days before the Irish Republic was set up in Dublin, and he said they had a representation for over 30 years, didn't create an overwhelming problem. So we'll see whether his feelings about that are echoed in Ottawa when the Bloc Québécois turns up. Now, we want a quick check-in with a couple of our political reporters who have been covering this campaign. Denise Harrington has been covering Kim Campbell since day one. Keith Bogue has been covering Jean Chrétien since day one. Quick remarks from each of you, Denise and Keith, and let's start with you, Denise. The days ahead, the tough decisions now have to be made by Kim Campbell, not only the obvious one, handing over power and when it happens, but her own future. What are you hearing there tonight?
Well, they're moving very quickly. Ms. Campbell may go back to what it was early as tomorrow with a cabinet meeting later in the week. I've been told by most of her advisors that she will consult widely in the party before she decides her future, but the fact that she's probably lost her seat means that her options may be foreclosed and she will have to step down, as Suzille said, because of that leadership review question. Transition, they're looking at perhaps 10 days now. There have been informal talks with the Liberals. It could be as early as 10 days, no later than 2 weeks, they're telling me tonight.
All right, Denise, thanks. Keith Bogue's in Shawinigan tonight, where he just watched that victory celebration and speech from Jean Chrétien. Keith, the immediate plans for Chrétien in the days ahead?
Well, in the days ahead, things get a lot harder, I think, for them. Tomorrow he'll have a little scrum here with reporters, not a formal press conference, but then he flies back to Ottawa early afternoon and immediately goes into meetings with the people who he's been talking with over the last few months about how the transition is going to be handled. On Wednesday, there will be a formal news conference. At that time, we'll get a better sense of what the agenda will be for the Liberal government. We'll also be told who the transition team will be officially. There will be names put to titles of people who will be handling particular responsibilities. What I'm hearing, not just what Denise is hearing in terms of the time it will take for a transition, probably about 10 days, 2 weeks at the outside. The end of that, the last day of the transition, the cabinet will be named. And again, we'll get a better sense of whether they're going to meet Parliament, for instance, before Christmas. When are they going to have the First Minister's meeting that that Mr. Chrétien has promised before Christmas on the subject of taxation. There are a whole host of other things that have to be dealt with very quickly. After to name one, the window for renegotiating that, if they're really serious about it, is very, very small. So as I said, a lot of work to be done. Things only get more difficult from here on in.
All right, so from both of you then, the tough decisions having to be made by both the winner and the loser tonight over the next few days. Keith Bogue, Denise Harrington, thanks for your work throughout the campaign, and from listening to what you just told us then, your work's not going to get it any easier in the immediate days ahead. One quick note, one of the things we'll be tracking, and we won't have the final figure until tomorrow sometime, is the national turnout. Canada's proud of its turnout rate on days like this, usually around 75%. All the indications, though, so far today is that the turnout is down across the country, decreased in every province except Quebec. We don't have an overall rate yet at this, but right now we're looking at somewhere around 71%. Now, that's down 4% from the average of somewhere around 75%. That's not a good sign. But look at it the other way, though, we're much better off than many countries, one very close by, the United States, where they have a tough time getting 50% turnout in national elections. But turnout down this time. I think that surprises a lot of people. They expected a big turnout today. The weather was good in most parts of the country, but it didn't happen. Turnout down somewhat. Rex Murphy has been helping us understand the story behind the numbers throughout the day today. Rex, your final thoughts.
Okay, Peter, thanks very much. I will be unwontedly terse. There was more in this election tonight of rejection than there was of embrace. Not to diminish Mr. Chrétien's triumph, but it's the number two and the devastation of a great political institution that is the basic line of this convention. Ms. Campbell inherited more grief than momentum, and the establishment of the bloc in Quebec means that however much we may wish it, you cannot eliminate constitutional debate from the Canadian agenda. That's my twist on it, at least.
Thank you, Rex, for your contributions just then and throughout the evening. Pamela, final thoughts from the political panel.
Well, lots of thoughts from this group gathered here tonight, and some of them will be involved in transition and the change, and some of them will be involved in figuring out what to do next inside their own particular parties. Let me reintroduce quickly Hugh Siegel, Stephen Lewis, Heather Briesman. Tom Flanagan is also with us. We'll keep going down the list, and we hope Daniel Turp will join us from Quebec as well. But Heather, let's go to you. As we heard from Denise and Keith, some of the problems now are the road ahead. 170 odd seats here. Mr. Chrétien has to put together a cabinet. It's got to reflect some direction for the Liberal Party, some signals. What would be your advice?
Sweet problems, I must say, the kind we all want to have. He'll have some challenges, but I think the key is that he needs to put together a cabinet which really will reflect the way ahead. People who were deeply involved in the development of the platform, and there are several who did get elected tonight.
Is he leaning more toward the Paul Martins of the world, if we can say that, the new, more pragmatic Liberals, rather than the old left wing of the party?
Well, I think there's no question that Mr. Martin will have a very major role to play. No matter what cabinet post he gets, he will have a very major role to play. But I think Mr. Chrétien is a man who takes loyalty very seriously, and you can well expect to see some people with whom he has been working for his entire political career.
Let me bring Daniel Turp in, if we can, from Montreal. Are you there, Mr. Turp?
Yes.
Can you just, as we heard from one of our commentators, Rex, just a few moments ago, he was basically saying you can't get out of it in this country. Every time you turn around, the constitutional issue is back on the table. Is that what you intend to do, is make sure that issue is front and center about Quebec's role and how its departure, if that in fact happens, will be conducted?
I think Mr. Bouchard said that his aim is to explain to Canadians and to people in Parliament that sovereignty is the best thing that should be achieved for both Quebec and Canada. I don't think he'll want to engage in constitutional negotiations, and I don't think he has in front of him people that want to do that. Monsieur Chrétien has repeatedly said during the campaign that he doesn't want to talk about the Constitution, and Monsieur Bouchard suggests that the issue of Quebec's place or future is at the next Quebec election and the next referendum in Quebec.
So
if Canada wants to start a new process of constitutional negotiation, well, that belongs to the parties that will be represented in Parliament. But Mr. Bouchard certainly does not want to discuss constitution. He wants that issue to be discussed in a Quebec election and referendum where other Canadians could take part in those processes in Quebec.
Mr. Flanagan, Tom, is this part of the importance of your party's presence tonight? The final numbers, of course, yet to be decided, but as Canadians face that question of, in a sense, negotiations with Quebec, that you have somehow been given a mandate on that issue?
Well, I don't think we should jump ahead of ourselves there. I think we have to go through the steps. There will be a provincial election in Quebec, and it's quite possible that the Liberals will be returned to power, and there may not be any referendum on sovereignty in the foreseeable future. I don't think we should prejudge that. I think the immediate agenda for the Reform Party is actually rather different. They don't control the agenda because of the majority government. I think the number one priority for the Reform Party will be and must be to deliver on President Manning's promise of a new style of representation. I think this, more than anything else, has put the party over the top in so many ridings. And so I think the party now has to work very hard developing in concrete terms what it means to be a representative in closer touch with constituents.
A final few words from Stephen and from Hugh. And Hugh, let me start with you, because all the conflicting signals that we're hearing tonight, will there be, in some senses, if not a constitutional debate, a redefining of Confederation and a redefining of the rules by which we play this game?
I think what voters did tonight, Pamela, was to say that they are not happy with the old brokerage political parties where issues about how you distribute the wealth, how decisions are made on an allocation basis are made within parties and caucuses. And they want to see those decisions argued out in the open on the floor of the House of Commons by parties whose biases are openly stated. And I don't think that is necessarily a destructive thing for the country. And I think it's a message not about doing things, not about changing what we do, but doing them differently so that there is transparency so the voters can see what decisions are being made.
I'd like to give the final word to Stephen tonight in our discussion.
That is good of you, but I point out, Pamela, that you have been observing scrupulously the way in which the parties are standing. Therefore, you must hereafter ask the question of me before you ask it of Hugh. In order that the gradation be... I do, however, agree with the way in which Hugh has phrased things. I don't think there is anything wrong with the Quebec issue being front and center in the House of Commons and in Quebec in another year or year and a half. Look, this country has to deal with this reality at some point. We can't go on forever without getting a resolution.
But are we headed for real change, or with another majority government, are we going to be able to...
No. We're headed for change. There is a new tone, there is a new nuance. Maybe it's my Pavlovian combative sense, but I want to point out that the only old-style political rhetoric tonight was that of Mr. Manning, curiously enough, in the speech that he made.
All right, to Hugh Segal, Stephen Lewis, Heather Reisman, Tom Flanagan, and in Montreal, Daniel Turp, thank you very much for your insight and your comments and helping us through this complicated and exciting evening, our political pundits and their words, their wit, and their wisdom. Thanks again. Peter?
All right, Pamela, thanks very much. Well, we go from the pundits and the pollsters and the media, the leaders, to the people. They started this day with their votes, and they're going to end it on our broadcast tonight with their thoughts about their expectations of the new government that has formed, the Liberal government, the way the House of Commons is going to look. We've gathered Canadians in Halifax, in Montreal, in Toronto here, and in Vancouver as well, and we want to end our program with some thoughts from them. I'm going to start in Vancouver, where, Michael, your sense tonight of the kind of expectation you have of the government that's being formed tonight.
Well, we sent a clear message, I think, about national unity. I think a lot of us in Western Canada felt held hostage by the strength of the Bloc. I think we wanted a majority government. We needed to see one. We felt threatened, I think, by the Bloc's and its strength. And we sent a clear message of unity in the country. And this is a new group of Liberals. They're going to have a fiscal conscience with a strong vote for the reform. And I think that's what we expect. We expect a new Liberal Party that's not going to spend. It's going to have a fiscal conscience. And it's going to put the Bloc, I think, in its place because we voted for Canadian unity in the rest of Canada.
Okay, let's go over to Montreal for a moment. Philippe,
yes,
your expectations of this new government.
I don't have very high expectations. I mean, throughout the campaign, Mr. Chrétien has been very vague about what he would do. I mean, aside from all the fluff that he gave about dignity and all that, which is all very good, but he didn't really put any meat behind what he would do. That's one thing. The other thing is, as far as national unity, I think from tonight's votes you get a very clear message is being sent by the province here about what it wants to do, and as well from the West, the Reform also sends a very good message, very clear message. And I think having those two regional currents doesn't really fit into Mr. Chrétien's vision of the country. So
do you think he'll have any choice but to hear those messages coming from both Quebec and the West?
I think he won't have a choice. I mean, as I guess Mr. Harrison and Mr. Lewis said before we came on the air, the constitutional issue, although we may wish it to go away, has not been put to rest just yet, because you get still a province that's not satisfied with the current situation.
Okay, I want to go back over to Vancouver, trying to get a word from everybody here before we leave tonight. Lois in Vancouver, your thoughts?
Well, I'm really quite concerned about the very strong majority of the Liberals and what that means for the deficit. I think that we will need a strong voice to deal with issues of fiscal responsibility. That was a message that I heard, and that, in fact, I thought that the Progressive Conservatives would have been able to deliver on. I'm quite disappointed, but I really do believe that we need to hear a very strong message from Mr. Chrétien about fiscal responsibility to ensure that our children and our grandchildren will have a country to worry about in the future.
All right. Diane, here in Toronto, your expectations of the new government and the new parliament?
I expect Chrétien to live up to his promises and doing something about the Aboriginal needs and helping our communities to implement self-government, because if we don't implement self-government, we're going to continue to live in a crisis that we have been for the past years and years, and there hasn't been a government in place that has been able to address that problem.
Okay, it's interesting to note tonight there were a number of Aboriginal candidates running in the country. Only 3 of them, we're told at the moment, have won their seats. Okay, back to Vancouver. Tomiko, your thoughts on the new parliament, your expectations of what it'll be like?
Well, it does appear that the Canadian people have given the Liberals a clear mandate to go ahead with their plan. I just really hope that the Liberal government will exercise forms of fiscal restraint and control over how much they actually borrow to implement their plan. Being a young Canadian, it does worry me, because I believe it is fundamentally wrong to mortgage the future incomes of the next generation in order to pay for the programs of today. It just erodes their ability to pay for a social safety net in the future for their own.
Okay, Montreal once again. Suraj, your thoughts, your expectations tonight?
Yes, I think in principle Jean Chrétien has said, but the point is that he has not said how he is going to do this, because people are very fearful and they felt alienated. That's why from the Conservative Party the Bloc emerged and the Reform emerged. And I think we have to make it very inclusive of the grassroots people and have the regional committees that are met, and the concerns of these committees are heard on a monthly basis in Ottawa, so that it becomes all inclusive, and they have to reduce the government fat. I think we should reduce it to, Kim Campbell tried to reduce the number of ministries, but I think Jean Chrétien should reduce more fat in the government, should try to do something to reduce the expenses of the Senate, and try to make it very inclusive regardless of what party people come from, because I think we have to be more worried about the Reform rather than Bloc Québécois, because the policies that Reform is talking about, it is very damaging to Canadian unity as compared to Bloc Québécois.
Okay, well, it'll be interesting to see whether he listens to your advice on reducing the number of ministries and ministers. He's got a huge caucus now, many of whom who will want to, and expect, I suppose, cabinet representation. Here in Toronto, your thoughts, sir?
My thoughts go with the hundreds of thousands of people in Canada that are not part of this Liberal love-in tonight. I'm a nurse who works with the homeless, and there are hundreds of thousands of Canadians who have lost their job due to free trade, who are homeless, who have children relying on food banks. And my question to the Liberal government is, what are you going to do about the GST? What are you going to do about NAFTA? What are you going to do about transfer payments to the provinces?
What do you expect they're going to do?
I'm very skeptical, in fact. I think they are going to repeat what we've seen in history. So voters are going to have to speak out again.
A couple of final quick comments here.
Peter, this is precisely the thing. I believe that the mandate was given for jobs, for creating opportunity. And Canadians should be vigilant and make sure they lobby their members of parliament to stick to those promises. That's what they were elected on, and that's why the Tories were defeated.
Okay, so the people's job doesn't end today with just voting. They got to keep pushing. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that the country's going to be feeling in a year just about the way they felt about the Tories over the last little while. I think they're not going to get the kind of attention they're looking at. Chrétien just doesn't have the money to spend $6 billion on jobs right away, and we can see by the fallout of the seats tonight that someone else might have a hold of their agenda.
Okay, Vancouver. Sigmund, is it? Have you got a thought there, your expectations of what to expect from this parliament?
I certainly do. I'm quite concerned for the future of Canada. Here we have a Bloc Québécois elected now to become an official opposition, it looks. While culturally it enhances the country of Canada, they're now and have always been a thorn in the side of the political arena. And I'm concerned that at the federal level, we're going to get bogged down in this obsession with Quebec versus Canada again. And it may be convenient for Mr. Chrétien to buy into that while he has difficulty creating all these jobs he's promised. Here in the West, we're tired of being held hostage by the East, and the last round of constitutional talks have been politically driven. The people of Canada have clearly stated that the politicians were not interested in that. Even the people in Quebec have stated that. I don't want to see in this next 4 or 5 years us get bogged down again in all these constitutional wranglings. We need to repair the state of the economy. We need to protect our social programs, and I'm really glad to see the NDP hang on to some of their seats in this country so that there is a voice for some of those social programs in the House of Commons.
All right, Sigmund, thanks very much for your comments. All of the people who've gathered tonight in Vancouver, also in Montreal, and here in Toronto, we do appreciate your time tonight. It's been a long night for everyone, and especially for you watching the results coming in and trying to analyze them as well as to what they mean to you. Now, before we leave tonight, we do want to take a quick run across the country, the latest standings, the way we see them, province by province across the country. Let's start on the East Coast. In Atlantic Canada, the first ridings in tonight were from Newfoundland. Clean sweep. All 7 ridings went Liberal in Newfoundland tonight. 7 of 7. You can't get better than that, as the Liberals signaled very quickly that they were going to win big time. They did the same thing in Nova Scotia, winning 11 of the 11 ridings there. Another clean sweep in Nova Scotia. In New Brunswick, well, gee, they lost 1 seat in Nova Scotia tonight to the Tories, but they won the other 9. And in Prince Edward Island, final Atlantic Canadian province to report, they held all 4 they held before. So out of Atlantic Canada, they got 31 of the 32 seats. Now, as we move, excuse me, into Central Canada, starting to lose the old voice there.
It's been a long night.
It's been in Quebec, which will be next up as our Cross Canada tour of the provinces in Quebec. Here's the way it looks now at the end of the evening. The Bloc Québécois winning 54 of the 75 seats. The Liberal Party 19. The Tories 1. That's it. Jean Charest, he wins his riding in Sherbrooke, Quebec. 1 independent, former Tory. And I should correct myself from earlier on in the evening. I had suggested that Mr. Bernier, who's the independent riding in Beauce, had been convicted of some illegalities. I'm wrong on that. He has been charged, and I apologize for the misstatement earlier. In Ontario, 98 Liberal seats, 1 Reform, no Tories. First time in the history of the Tory party wiped out in Ontario. In fact, the Tories don't have a seat west of the Quebec-Ontario border. And could you ever imagine that happening?
And first time for the New Democrats that they do not have a seat in the province of Ontario either since its formation in 1961.
That's right. So in Ontario, that's where we declared a majority government for the Liberals tonight. They build up big-time seats in Ontario. In Manitoba, and still one undecided yet, and that's where the NDP is leading in one Manitoba seat. But the Liberals have 112, the Reform is 1 and the NDP is leading in Bill Blakey's riding, veteran NDP member, but he is leading at the moment. That one has not been decided, still a close race. Saskatchewan, 14 ridings, here we go, Liberals 5, NDP 5. A good showing by the Liberals. They've been shut out in Saskatchewan for years. They won 5 seats, the NDP holding on to 5, and that's the major chunk of their 9-member caucus at the moment. Reform winning 4 seats.
And a good 3-way race in that province that we're not seeing in some of the other areas, and so legitimately a 3-way race.
That's right, and in Alberta, it used to be Tory, turf, blue, 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 Alberta, gone. This time the Reform Party, 23 seats, still one undecided at the moment. Edmonton Northwest, where the Reform candidate Richard Kaler is leading the Liberal, but it's too close to call as we end the evening. Well, we just called it. There you go, 23-3. British Columbia, still one riding yet to be decided. New Westminster, Burnaby, where the Reform candidate is leading the Liberal, but it's close, hasn't been declared yet. But Reform, big time in BC, 23 ridings, leading that other one for 24. The Liberals at 6, and the NDP at 2. The Tories once again.
Many long-time New Democrats wiped out in British Columbia as well, home turf for them.
So let's look at, when you add all that up, what it means in the House of Commons. That's the color of the national map now. The only blue seat, a big one in Quebec, but it's only one. Liberals are winning 176 seats tonight. The Bloc Québécois out of Quebec, 54 seats. Reform at 53. That's why those 2 ridings that are too close to call yet, they're both Reform leads, so it's unlikely that they can do better than 53. NDP at 9, the Tories at 2.
And we should just give a wrap-up of where the leaders stand at this particular point. All the leaders have been elected with the exception of Kim Campbell, the Prime Minister of Canada. Lucien Bouchard elected. Jean Chrétien elected in the riding of Saint Maurice, and a lot of people said he was in trouble there. Preston Manning taking out a Tory cabinet minister in Alberta, and Audrey McLaughlin holding on to her seat in Yukon, of course, and Kim Campbell going down to defeat in Vancouver Centre. Very interesting riding. She only won it by less than 300 votes the last time around, and it's always been one of those things. But no word from the Prime Minister, from Kim Campbell tonight as we wrapped up as to what her political future would be, and no word from Audrey McLaughlin at this point either.
Okay, we do want to make sure that we check in with the Northern Canadian ridings. You just mentioned one of them, Yukon. That's the NDP elected. Both ridings in the Northwest Territories have gone Liberal tonight. They're both holds for the Liberals.
So there's still some outstanding questions as we finish this evening up. We, of course, were able to tell you early on in the evening that we were headed for a Liberal majority government, and that has indeed happened. But here we sit. It's almost 2 o'clock in the morning here in central Canada, well, 20 to 2 in the morning, and we still don't know who the opposition party is. Of course, the Bloc Québécois have a very, very good chance of it. If something happens overnight, recounts and ridings, we wouldn't want to be swear on a stack of books. This is the way it will end, because there are some question marks. But it looks as if the Bloc Québécois will in fact be the official opposition in this country.
Well, one of the computer animations that we've been using throughout the evening has been that one that gives you a sense of what the House of Commons may look like in terms of a computer-generated graphic, what it'll look like in terms of colors. Here we go, sliding in, looking from the top down at all those seats, 295 of them in the House of Commons.
It's going to be very crowded, that's for sure. The Liberals have spilled over onto the other side, onto the opposition side of the House of Commons, because they just have so many seats tonight. You can see that with the red color there, 176.
176, 8 NDP. These are just the elected. So we said there are 3 ridings still up for grabs, where the NDP is leading 1, Reform and 2 others. So Reform is elected, guaranteed 51 seats in the House of Commons. The Bloc Québécois at 54. 1 independent, a former Tory running in Quebec, 2 Tories. You count them, that's all there are. Just 2 Tories in the next House of Commons. That's what the seats will look like. There is another chamber in Parliament. It's the Senate, where the Tories have the majority. That's the unelected Senate, the appointed Senate. The Tories have a lead there. So that's your look overall at the numbers and what the next House of Commons may look like. Throughout the evening, obviously, we've been following one story, and one story only, that's the election. While we've been watching the story of the stunning election, some other stories have been happening. Here's a quick look at those. Starting in the Middle East with another important step on the road to peace. Israel released hundreds of Palestinian prisoners today, and more are expected to follow in coming weeks. It's a move designed to help cement the Israeli-PLO accord. But for many Palestinians, the number of prisoners released today was not enough. And for some Israeli politicians, it was too many. The CBC's Anna Maria Tremonti reports.
He had been in jail 10 months, and today Halal Hasuva was among the few from this West Bank town given his freedom. His mother was overcome. In this initial release of prisoners, the Israelis gave women, the sick, and the young and the old their freedom. But men between the ages of 18 and 50 were not included. Families waited anxiously at checkpoints in the occupied territories, many of them in vain. Women marched to a prison in Gaza demanding the release of all of the thousands of Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails. Their message that everyone must walk free echoed around the territories. But this was also the day 2 Israeli soldiers were buried. They were ambushed yesterday by members of Hamas, the extremist group opposed to peace between Israel and the Palestinians. In response, Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin refused to allow the release of prisoners connected to Hamas. Israeli opposition leader Benjamin Netanyahu wanted Rabin to call off the entire prisoner release.
This release will do more to exacerbate terrorism, to accelerate terrorism, than any other step that I can think of.
But Rabin said he wasn't about to let Hamas dictate the peace process.
If we'll react this way, we'll give the veto right on the continuation of the peace negotiations to the most extreme elements among the Palestinians, to the Hamas and to Islamic Jihad.
Rabin says his government has a responsibility to keep trying to move forward with the peace process, regardless of setbacks from extremists. To that end, he says Israel will keep the commitments it made to the PLO and continue to release prisoners. Anna Maria Tremonti, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Hollywood legend Vincent Price has died of lung cancer. Price was trained as a stage actor, but in a career spanning 5 decades, he made his name as the Prince of Horror. Price played the perfect villain in such movies as House of Wax, The Pit, The Pendulum, and The Raven. Price died at home in Los Angeles. He was 82 years old. 4 people were killed today when a police helicopter crashed near Quebec City. 3 of the victims were police officers. The 4th was the pilot. The chopper went down this morning during a search mission. It crashed near Montmorency Falls, a scenic tourist spot. Witnesses say the helicopter snagged wires from a cable car. The police were using the aircraft to look for a man who went missing near the falls. The barricades have gone up again in Oka, Quebec, at the site of the standoff 3 summers ago. This time, Mohawks are blocking the road to protest the pace of land claims talks with the province. Details from the CBC's Ron Charles.
The barricade may have a party atmosphere, but the Kanesatake Mohawks say they are serious about the issues that brought them to this.
The government's screwing around with everything?
The protesters have the support of the Mohawk leadership as long as things remain peaceful.
We can't make it any simpler than that. We want our land back. The land that was stolen from us 300 years ago by the Serpentians.
The barricade is in the same place Mohawk protesters fought off a police raid 3 years ago, leaving one Quebec police force officer dead and touching off a 75-day standoff between Mohawk and police and eventually the Canadian Army. For now, the police are just keeping an eye on the barricade and rerouting traffic.
We are here only for the public security. Okay, we are here for the people who have not lived there, or suggest to take another road for go around this thing, this manifestations, because we don't want confrontation.
The protesters say their barricade will remain until their demands are met. Police won't say how long they are willing to wait. Ron Charles, CBC News, Oka.
So some of the other stories we've been following tonight, but the main story, of course, what's behind these numbers. The election result, a huge victory for the Liberals, a majority government, 177 seats. The Bloc Québécois will be the official opposition at 54 seats. Of those undecided seats we showed you just about 5 minutes ago, already one of them has been decided, but destined for certain to be a recount. The Liberals have won the riding in Edmonton that was so close between Liberals and Reform. That's why the Reform numbers dropped to 52. The Liberals have won it by 1 vote. There's going to be a recount there that you can bank on. Well, Pamela, an amazing night, a long night.
Yes, an incredible story, an incredible political story. We've talked, as we always do in the course of political campaigns, about changes and how change is needed. We really have seen some dramatic forces for change move into position on our political landscape tonight. The Bloc Québécois in the province of Quebec, the Reform Party in the western part with even 1 seat in the province of Ontario, so it was a beachhead, albeit a small one, and 2 long-standing, traditional, old-time parties. The CCF turned into the NDP, the Progressive Conservatives wiped off, in many cases, off the political map, shut out of entire provinces and regions. The Conservatives at the end of tonight with 2 seats. It's really an amazing story about change. And of course, the Prime Minister of Canada, not only her party defeated, but defeated personally in her own seat. So change is what we're about to see.
All right. So tough decisions having to be made, obviously, by leaders of 2 parties, at least, in terms of the Tories and the NDP. Neither one of them getting official party status. Kim Campbell, what will be her future? Who knows? Same goes for Audrey McLaughlin, although she did win her seat in Yukon. So it's been an incredible night of upsets, of victory, of change. That's been the major thing, change. The Liberals, the new government, the Bloc Québécois, the opposition, the Reform Party, 3rd place finishers, NDP Tories, gone. Thanks to everyone. Special thanks to Pamela for our working tonight on Election 93 coverage. Hope you've enjoyed it. Good night for now. I'm Peter Mansbridge.